I realized that when I injected a sound, I was kind of the new kid on the block or the new animal in the area. It didn't scare them. It was just like, who in the heck is that? One of the biggest misconceptions and myths is that cows have a whine or an estrus sound to let a bull know that she's ready to be bred. And this is the most untrue statement that can be had. It really is. I talk to hunters all the time and they'll say, well, when I go out and I hear a bugle, I challenge everyone, because sooner or later one will play. My approach is understand what you're hearing and call every one of them in. I hate to see newer hunters go out there thinking that they have to be a $10,000 bill walking through the woods. No way. Get something affordable. Now, if another elk really gets upset, he's going to lip ball. And so he's going to give more of a guttural sound like this. You see it, that's the top of the anger chain. When hunters start realizing it's the bull that tells other elk, I have a hot cow here, they will start putting two and two together and realize this is how you call bulls in. This is Paul Medel with ElkNut Outdoors, and here we are going to talk elk today with Living Country in the City.
Y'all ready for your dose of flyover state spirit? Straight from the concrete jungle? Well, put down your latte and pull on your boots. It's time for Living Country in the City.
Hey y'all, welcome to episode 79 of Living Country in the City. Want to take a quick moment to say thank you to Sawyer Products for being such great supporters of the podcast. Y'all, Sawyer has been making some of the best and most reliable outdoor products for over 30 years. I'll tell you what, you would be hard-pressed to find any products that can compete with what Sawyer puts out. Their water filtration is top-notch, and I am a huge fan of their insect repellent, especially getting ready for my Arizona trip coming up. I have heard that the bugs are getting pretty nasty out there at the moment. So make sure y'all head on over to Sawyer.com, check out their entire product lineup. We're talking about some of the most advanced and easy-to-use solutions for water treatment, insect repellent, sunscreen, and first aid. All of that awesome stuff that's really designed to keep you outdoors for longer. Also, a big thank you to all of the individuals out there who are supporting me, whether it's by tuning in every week, sharing the podcast, leaving ratings and reviews, or even those of you that have taken the next step and have started either buying Living Country in the City gear or supporting me financially through Patreon. I really appreciate it and would not be able to do this without y'all's help. For those of y'all that are tuning in and haven't checked it out, make sure you head on over to my support page. That's livingcountryinthecity.com/support. There are a ton of ways that you can really get involved and be part of Living Country in the City, whether that's simple stuff like I mentioned, sharing the podcast, subscribing to my YouTube channel, or leaving a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher. Or you can go as far as to pick up a Living Country in the City hat or decal, and even head on over to my Patreon page and committing to a monthly donation that comes with some really awesome rewards that you can only get through Patreon. So I encourage you to go check that out. Once again, that's livingcountryinthecity.com/support, and all of the info and links are right there. So on to today's episode. I am super excited to bring this one to y'all. This is a guy I have been dying to talk to for quite a while. I am talking a huge wealth of knowledge, more than we probably could have gotten out in any 10 podcasts. But we managed to cram quite a bit of it into a single one. And as I'm sure y'all can see, this is hands down the longest podcast I've released. So make sure y'all go to the bathroom beforehand, because I really hope none of y'all are listening to me on the toilet. That might get a little awkward. Anyway, make sure y'all grab your glass of water, get a snack, and sit down and get ready to take some notes, because I am talking with the ElkNut himself, Mr. Paul Medel, and he really just lays out how to talk the talk when it comes to elk. Once again, this is an awesome podcast packed full of great information, but I will warn you, about midway through, we ran into some technical difficulties. The internet went out on his end, and we kind of had to start it up, so you will notice a big glitch in the middle. I apologize for that, but we had to roll with it, so you guys do too. Anyway, grab your notepads and enjoy episode 79 with the ElkNut. Thank you so much for hopping on the line with me today, Paul.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So I always like to start out just with a little bit of an introduction about yourself and, how you got your start in hunting and elk calling.
Well, coming from a family that didn't hunt, I have no background in hunting at all. So hopefully this will, kind of be an inspiration to those who are out there that were maybe in the same situation as myself. No, I didn't have a family at all that elk hunted, deer hunted. They didn't do anything. So this was kind of just a lot of trial and error on my part. And it seemed like when I turned around 10, 11 years old, I have no idea why, but I had this desire to want to elk hunt. And it was from what I saw on the Outdoorsman show with, I think it was Bell Lang was his name. And he planted that seed in me, and probably the guy that made it grow as I kept trying to find anything, because, there was no internet. There's no anything. There was nothing on elk hunting or a lot of different styles of hunting. It was Larry Jones. From Oregon, and he was the one that kind of was an inspiration to me, which he has no idea he was, but he was, and that's the guy that I kind of sunk my teeth into, got my first calls, my first bugle, which looked like a vacuum cleaner hose, and from there, it just kind of started to grow, and I have always had a passion for elk. I hunt other animals, but there's nothing that gets my adrenaline going like elk hunting. The vocalization is what it is. If they did not vocalize in the bugles and the cow sounds that they make, I'm sure it wouldn't be as interesting or big of a draw to me, because I don't have that same feeling for other animals, even though I enjoy, the sport of hunting them all. But elk has a special place in my heart. So those of you out there who might be newer elk hunters who or were in the same boat as I was, don't think it can't happen for you. It really, really can. And now I'm in my, darn near in my mid 60s. And so a lot of time has passed between now and then. And I dedicated like about 35 years of my life to understanding elk vocalization. It meant that much to me. It started real slow. And then the fire just kept getting kindled and built up and built up. And the more I was out there, especially non-hunting seasons, and we're talking about public lands, over-the-counter type stuff. And I would go out there and sit and listen to these elk until all hours of the morning. I wouldn't get home sometimes till 2 or 3 in the morning, because I was so intrigued by listening to them and being around some of the groups that were in larger herds. Come in July and August especially, they really group up and they come down out of the lower country back into the high country here, where they spend their summers and their falls, but they migrate out in the winter. And so I would listen to them, and one thing led to another as I started understanding they had a language, and the language, each message they were sending to one another was through emotion. So it wasn't they had English words, but we try to translate it like that and try to show people by using the word challenge, bugle, location, roundup, bugle, lip ball, to associate that emotion or tone that an elk is using. And so it was pretty cool to be able to go through that period of my life many, many years ago to start understanding that, and then taking it right into the elk hunting world, especially for archery hunters who are hunting the rut. And there's rifle hunters that hunt the rut times 2, which is like the last week of August, all of September, and a lot of October. Elk will vocalize and still have cows coming in and out of estrus during that time frame. And that's certainly a great time to be out there.
No, absolutely. I'm actually curious, because I guess what gets you excited about elk is this vocalization. I think we've all heard people say that, turkey hunting, just like elk hunting. Elk are just, 1,000-pound turkeys. Have you, what are your thoughts when you hear people say stuff like that?
I think there's similarities, absolutely. And then there's parts of it that's not, since a turkey can't smell you. So you don't have to worry about fighting the wind on a turkey hunt. But as far as calling turkeys and beating them at their own game, I think there's definitely a resemblance there. I've hunted turkeys for years, many, many years. So I understand what people are referring to when they say that. It isn't like a negative response, like, there's nothing alike. No, absolutely. There's definitely some similarities, especially if you're going to start calling and you've been using a reed for turkeys and not just a box call or the slate or whatnot. But if you've been using a reed a lot and your tongue muscles are built up to it, you know how to throw the proper amount of air, the placement of the reed, tongue pressure for specific tones and sounds, you'll easily go from that into elk hunting. It much, much easier than someone who's never used a mouth reed. So as far as the similarities there, and there's just as much excitement. You might not cover nearly the ground going after a turkey, as you would in elk in the western states and stuff. Since, I mean, we cover between 5 and 10 miles a day on foot, almost every single day we're out there. And I can honestly say when I'm turkey hunting, I don't cover that much territory on my feet. So, there may be a line drawn there, but as far as the vocalization and trying to understand that bird, that they have regathering sounds when the hens get separated, or they can have a challenging sound for an older tom to a younger one. I mean, and the young tom's trying to call the birds their way. Yeah, you see, you have those similarities and you can build on that. So it gives you an appreciation for elk hunting, that now you're not fighting a 20-pound animal, you're fighting an 800-pound animal, and you have to get that animal out of the woods. But, just getting your feet wet in turkey hunting, I think is a great way that will lead you into an elk hunt.
Well, now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't kind of the elk calling using those diaphragm calls come from using turkey calls initially?
It probably did, and I don't know the stats on that or what actually happened, how that went from one to the other. But, I would not be surprised if it did. I've actually never been asked that. But you never know. Maybe it did come from that. It's like asking me who was the first person that called a bugle, that a bullman. I don't know. But it's something we've all just kind of gotten used to. But, yeah, as far as reeds and go, yeah, I don't know if that was the case, but if you say it is, I'll buy it.
Well, I'm sure somebody will email me and either confirm or harshly correct me. But
there you go.
So, out of curiosity, how has elk calling with the tools or what's available to people out there? How has that changed from when you first started learning about all of this, from watching those, I guess, videos of Larry Jones to now? What have you seen change?
Well, there's been a lot of change, and for the better of the elk hunter. And the reason for that is the society that we live in today is different than 50 years ago when I first started entertaining the idea of wanting to hunt. There were no videos. There was nothing. There's really no written literature, and I didn't even know Larry Jones had a video. I heard his name, and so I knew he had calls, and that was really the extent that I had with Larry. That was it. I never read any material he ever had or watched anything. It was just buying the calls and trying to learn myself. There was nobody there to share instruction. Today, you have all those tools, and it's made a big difference. And again, it's because of the high-tech lifestyle that a lot of people have today. And I'll bet you anything, the majority of elk hunters we have today, Sam, don't live in elk country. They don't have that luxury like I do, and you and others. I mean, they're just not there. And so they're like a sponge out there. They're thirsty. They're trying to take in everything they can because they see elk country 7 to 10 days a year. 350 days out of the year, they see none. And so for them to come and go through this cycle every time, it probably takes them several days before they can refresh their memory of what it was all about and avoid some of the pitfalls and the mistakes. But they still happen, but their memory gets refreshed much quicker after the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth year. And so being able to supply instructional information to these folks and help shorten that learning curve has certainly come a long way from 50 years ago when I first started to our present day. And it's good because I can remember when I was a little kid, there was no help. There was nothing, and I didn't expect any. Think about it. I didn't expect anything. It was just like, what do I got to do to make this work? And make what work? I didn't even know what that meant. It was just like, I kept going forward wanting to know more about this critter that I'd seen on television. And we're talking black and white here. There was no color. There was no DVRs. There was none of this stuff. No iPhones. Their communication was different. So trying to find some information, it was like pulling teeth, but at that time I didn't know it. As I look back, compared to what's offered to newer hunters today, you guys have no idea how lucky you are, and which is great because it's the same thing in life, no matter what avenue you look in. This just happens to be elk hunting. So you guys out there, take advantage of this stuff. This is like almost my 20th year that I first started coming out with material because it all started accidentally. I had been listening to elk, and I was doing it for my personal gain. I wasn't doing it to sell anything. I was trying to get better at elk hunting.
Yeah.
You see, because I started out as a rifle hunter, and I just kept going, trying to pay attention to these elk and just trying to learn anything. And I started understanding that all these sounds meant something. And one of the big groundbreakers was for me was when I first got out there on one of these trips. I would sit there and listen to 50, 60 elk. They were just they're talking everywhere. And I mean, I'm within 100 yards of them sitting in the trees. They don't know I'm there. And I'm sitting there and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give a cow call here and just see what goes. I'm going to be part of the group. And so I gave a cow call. It was with a reed in my mouth, one of Larry Jones's reed. And when I gave a cow call, those elk shut up instantaneous. Stop. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them just stared in my direction. And I was like, what? I mean, these things were talking 100 miles a minute. I mean, just going like crazy, chattering everywhere. And when I made a sound, it just quiet. And I was like, it told me right then and there, those elk knew each other by their sound. I mean, nobody had to write me a book or you don't have to go to college for it. I was seeing and witnessing. And of course, after that, I did it lots of times because I was trying to cement the idea. It wasn't a rare occurrence that it was just lucky. No. And so as time went on, I realized these guys know each other. And as I learned more what each sound represented in the elk world through the tone and the emotion, I realized that when I injected a sound, I was kind of the new kid on the block or the new animal in the area. It didn't scare them. It was just like, who in the heck is that? But out of all those elk, how did they know? It just intrigued me so much that I kind of thought about it. What if you had a family of 5 or 7 and they're all yapping and you don't even see them, they're in different rooms, and then somebody else threw in another voice? You immediately would go, hey, wait a minute, that's not my kid or that's not my wife, but that's, immediately you go, there's a difference. You don't go, oh, that's just still a human voice. I can't tell the difference on anybody. No, you do. And so do those elk. And I started using this against them. As a hunter, and I would, play on the emotion of those tones or the intensity. And cows do the same thing. When cows are talking, Sam, you'll hear them in a social manner, and they're kind of going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're just, you can tell there's really nothing behind those sounds of excitement or nervousness or that there's a threat in the area. But if all of a sudden one of them's not answering the other, they've drifted off from the group because they're in the timber, they're not in the sagebrush opening, they don't see each other. And after a few sounds, no sound comes back from so-and-so. All of a sudden you'll hear that cow that's in control or the lead cow in there. All of a sudden you'll hear her change her tone. And you'll hear her kind of start going, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Like, where are you? So-and-so. And she raises it. And if she doesn't get a response back or a visual of this animal or junior or whatever it is, you'll hear her lengthen it out and her volume will raise. And she'll start going, yeah. And she may do it 10, 12 times. She's trying to regather it, call it back to the group. And you'll hear that's her emotion. Like if you were separated from your buddy or a family member and you're going, Joey, and Joey answers you and you keep going. And next thing you know, you ask for Joey, and no answer. Next thing you're going, Joey, you're raising your, that's what you do. It's a human nature to do that. And this is what the animals are doing. And once I started understanding that all they're doing is changing the pitch, the whine, the volume to send a message. It wasn't like it was scientific. I started realizing there's a lot of other sounds where the most social sound a cow makes is a social cow. The ultimate request, where are you? Demand, high urgency is what's called a contact buzz. And everything in between is not as important as that contact buzz. Yeah, they may raise their voice, so to speak, or their emotion to get their point across, but the ultimate is that. It's like for bulls, the ultimate sound, the ultimate warning, or pay attention now is a lip ball bugle. That's the ultimate, whereas the least ultimate, or the most tame, is a location bugle, non-intimidational. And so, and then there's sounds in between, like if he was looking for a cow through a location bugle and you cow called, and this is what he was looking for, he's going to respond back with a different sound. He's no longer looking. He's not just going to continue using the location bugle or an advertising type bugle as he advertises himself looking for other elk, such as cows, and you respond. He's like us. If we ask for Joey, where are you? And he says, I'm over here. You go, oh, well, good. Okay, come on over here, Joey. That's what elk do. Now, all of a sudden, he changes his tone or his emotion to try to call you to him because you're something he's looking for. And so now he's going to change what's called the roundup bugle, and you'll notice he'll change that volume and 3 different notes all to one note and very short as he's going, just telling you to come on over. And if we did it through, let me make the sound with the bugle, okay? Is that all right?
Go for it.
Okay. Here is a bull right here, and he's just looking for a cow. This is the locator. That's all he's doing, and I'm trying to keep it low, nothing real loud, so the Skype will handle it. Now, if I'm cow calling and I do this, and he responds, here's how he's going to respond. He's going to let me know that he heard me. Nothing super aggressive, but he's going to let me know that he heard me, and now he's trying to call me over. And he may even do this. You notice how he just chuckles really quick, and he's not sucking air in. On a grunt, you'll hear a bull going as he gets a little bit more upset or a frustrated type sound, whereas the chuckle was almost ape-like in sound. It's low volume and they're very rapid. And he's trying to call you over. He's excited about the cow responding. Who knows? We walk up there and he could have been giving these bugles for 2 hours. As far as we know, he was only doing it for a minute or two when we got there. But you see, and so all of a sudden, there's what he was looking for. Now he encourages you to come. If you don't come, he will change his tone and get more insistent until he finally gets to the point where he could lip ball you out of just pure frustration that you're not doing what he's asking. And so you see, see how I can carry it away going in those different directions, but this is exactly what I was trying to learn, and it took years. None of this came, to me as a whole or a complete package in a few years. No way. This took year after year after year. And then you need to hear them repetitiously in similar situations so you can say, I can cement this idea saying this is exactly what this means. Because I can say I want it to mean this, and then all of a sudden in another situation, it means something else. That's like, dang, I thought I had it nailed and I don't. So that means I have to clarify things, and because I want to be accurate. It's like one of the biggest misconceptions you're going to hear in the elk world today. And this is really good for your listeners. They really want to pay attention to this note. One of the biggest misconceptions and myths is that cows have a whine or an estrus sound to let a bull know that she's ready to be bred or she's near breeding time. And this is the most untrue statement that can be had. It really is. They make no sound. None. Elk will communicate. Cows will communicate. Elk can make the same sounds as a bull can make. She can bugle. She can grunt. She can chuckle. She can do anything. The same as your wife or girlfriend can make the same sounds you can. You're just more manly about it, more mature, because that's how man is made. Well, the bull is made to make those types of sounds in a deeper type of thing when you start comparing the two. But cows make all the same bugles because cows will run the cow groups when the bulls aren't around, such as right now. They're in cow groups. Bulls are mainly in bull groups. The cows will bugle now. Why do they bugle? What are they saying? They're saying the same thing a bull does. It's just a cow using it. So she will keep the group together and communicate them with these location bugles. She can give chuckling. She can give nervous grunts. Bulls will cow call back and forth. See, cow calls aren't just for cows. They all make these sounds. And once you start understanding that, you start getting some really good ideas how to be creative out there and to use these sounds that make sense to the elk under specific situations. I talk to hunters all the time, and they'll say, well, when I go out and I hear a bugle, I challenge everyone because sooner or later one will play. Well, you know what that is? That's like a 1 or 2 out of 10. Maybe that will play if you find them in the right frame of mind. My approach is understand what you're hearing and call every one of them in. And that is our attempt, and that is, we do call most of our bulls in, but you have to tailor the calling to what they're asking, not being one-dimensional and saying, well, these are the only couple sounds I know, so I'm going to force feed them and hope you accept and come in. And in most cases, it doesn't work that way. And how do we know that? Look at the success rates. The success rates on an over-the-counter, do-it-yourself public land hunt are probably anywhere from 5 to 8 or 9%, especially with archery equipment. So that shows you 90 to 95 to 96% of the people go home with nothing every single year. So there's a lot more to it than you only have to do this to be successful. there are things, you can up your odds, if you want to just hunt water sources, tree standing, bedding areas, feeding areas, saddles where they're moving to and from these areas, which are basically destination spots. So there's a lot of ways to hunt elk, but nothing replaces calling elk. It's just, it's an adrenaline rush. You've beat them at their own game. And when you start seeing how successful you can be at it, it's fun to spot and stalk at times and change things up and sit. Maybe your legs are getting tired after so many days and you want to sit destination areas like I just mentioned. Okay, but for the main thrust of it, man, even in my 60s, nothing beats calling. And I've done this a long time. And it's just, there's something about that draw of hearing him bugle and then evaluating it and saying, okay, here's what I need to do to get this guy in. And when I'm doing this, I can usually put a time frame on it because I know how long it's going to take him. And folks will get to that level when you hear enough bugles and have been in enough situations with similar accounts. You start getting an idea from your past experience. It's like a baseball player. You got a really good pitcher and you got a really good hitter. Neither one has ever seen each other. And we're talking good on both. Who's going to win the battle? Most likely that pitcher. Because this batter has no idea what's going to get thrown at him. Nothing. And this is a good pitcher. Yeah, the guy might foul a few off. But once this batter sees this pitcher 4 or 5 times, he gets an idea. Okay, in this count, he likes throwing that slider. In this count, he likes doing this and that. He starts getting a feel. Doesn't mean he's still not fooled here and there. But before, he had nothing to go on. Now he's got some past experience with that pitcher. And so, see, now his odds go up of making better contact. It's the same with elk hunting. As you start getting in these various encounters, you're going to see that you can make some solid, really high odds decision on how that encounter will go because of some of your past experience. And different elk can give you different, looks, just like now he's facing a different pitcher and a different pitcher and a different pitcher. Years to come, he starts getting a really good way to evaluate them all. And here's kind of what's coming at me. And that's why this guy's hitting 50 home runs a year and batting 308. He's getting an idea. And not very many guys can do it. Just a few. And so it's the same with elk calling. And once you start getting really, really good at it, you start getting a real good feel. And anybody can do this. You don't need to hit home runs to be a good elk hunter. You see, and so by being able to share this information with newer hunters and help them to shorten the learning curve because they only have so many days to hunt, they have their families, they have their jobs. Not everybody owns their own business. The more you can dig in and find material, not just from myself, but from others that are willing to share some of the little nuggets out there, and you start putting those pieces of the puzzle together, it's just going to up your odds of success there, Sam.
No, that's... I don't even, there's so much in that already, and we haven't even dug into the meat of it yet.
Well, we haven't done a tactic.
Yep. I'm sitting here, I'm taking notes for myself. I always tell people, half of the reason I do this podcast is so I have an excuse to reach out to awesome, knowledgeable people and learn myself. And so I'm taking notes as we're recording here too. So,
all right.
But so I recently I've done a couple episodes on the mechanics of elk calling and kind of getting started in that. So say somebody, a new hunter, they're getting ready for their first elk hunt. They've gone through these episodes. They've gone through the mechanics. They know how to work the diaphragm and kind of make some of these basic sounds and that technical aspect. Where do they go from there? Say, I'm prepping for my first elk hunt. I know how to work it, but what sounds should I be making? Well, where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, keep it simple. You see, and it's just like a ball player, once again, getting into the big leagues. He's trying to prove himself there, and he knows that the best way he can do that is to play really good defense and just put the ball in play. You're not going to walk out there just being Mr. Great. Everybody's not a Bryce Harper out there. But there's a lot of good players that any team would love to trade for. That's how elk hunting is. When you're a new person, in this case, shoot the first animal that is legal. Build your confidence up that you can do it. How are you going to do that? By keeping it simple with your calling process. And in my opinion, if it was me, anybody can set a tree stand. And there, really, I know location, location, location. Whether you're going to sit a water source or wallow, or like I said before, the trails, any destination spot or trails leading to or from them, those are spots that have a high odds if you put your time in and you know what to look for. The downside of it is when you're sitting a tree stand or a ground blind, you have to sit there for hours, and then those hours usually turn into days. What this means is every second you're there, you have to monitor the wind. If your wind gives you up one time, that's it. Seconds. The elk you were hoping that showed up will never show up again during your stay. And guys don't understand that. If they bump some elk because they're sitting and it starts getting swirly because of the time of day they're there, they keep sitting and sitting because of the past activity they've had on a trail camera or they've seen visually, but they just blew all the elk out of there. And when you go to a destination spot and blow the elk out of the destination spot and you don't put one down, you're done. You need to move on and find a new area, new elk. So people need to think of these things, just because they were there doesn't mean they stay there. It's that important to an elk, and that it's that sacred in those areas. That human scent can drive them out, whereas seeing you isn't nearly as bad. It's the human scent that will really move those elk out. So if you take a new hunter, he needs to have confidence. How does a new hunter have confidence? The new hunter, what he needs to do is he needs to be able to shoot his bow. He needs to be physically fit to a degree. He doesn't need to be Cameron Hanes. Everybody would love to have that, title, but you don't need it. But you need to be physically fit so you can enter the woods at your own pace. You need to be able to have a fearless attitude. If you don't have a fearless attitude, you're going to find yourself sticking to trails everywhere you go, dirt roads, and you're never going to venture off of them very far because you don't know how to navigate. So you have to know how to navigate the woods. You have to know how to shoot your bow well and feel confident with my setup out to a limited yardage. You need to know what that limitation is and don't go beyond it. All these things build your confidence of knowing your limitations there, knowing what you can do once you get in the field. Then you got to look at the terrain that you're going to be able to negotiate. Where can I find terrain that is to my physical abilities, but yet I can still get away from other hunters? And it's things like that. Then your calling comes into play. Is it some of it open country and I need to glass? Because when it comes to finding and putting elk down, there's just not one thing. There is no one thing that happens and applies every time you get out of that rig and go into the elk woods. So it's a process, and you're just trying to prepare yourself all the time for whatever might be thrown at you. But for me, here's my typical day. And if somebody was new, I would do the same thing with them. My typical day is I will find an area the night before that I want to hunt. And if I'm already hunting areas I'm familiar with, I pick out one here and one here. And I rarely go back into that area the second day. I only hunt it one day. See, and a lot of people, they put all their eggs in one basket and they'll find this draw and they'll hunt it for 5 or 6 days. And it's ridiculous. If you're going to babysit elk that long, you're probably not going to kill one, or you're going to get really lucky. Once you find elk, you want to take care of business. You don't mess around. And of course, in order to do that, you have to understand the situations you're in and what time of the month is it. Are we talking pre-rut? I'm seeing 4 and 5 bulls together, no cows. How do I get that bull? You see, most everybody's going to fall on cow calling, trying to call those bulls in. And let's say it's September the 2nd and they're seeing this. Just to give you an example, is you need to play on that bull's manhood or those bulls' manhood. Cow calls aren't even going to bring them in because they would be around all the cows if they really cared. The bull's testosterone levels early on are very, very low, very low. As the month progresses and cows start coming in heat, their testosterone levels rise, and they get more excited and the urges become stronger for those cows. Well, at first in pre-rut, their urges are there for a cow, but it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 1 or a 2. It's nothing. But on that same scale, I need to know where I fit at as a bull elk in this area. I need to know where I fit at in the pecking order. They're like horses. They need to know, are they going to be a dominant type structured bull? Are they going to be one that possibly breeds cows? So bulls display for one another. And this is what they'll do is even larger groups, and they start getting their pecking order down. Who's who? Who's the top of the food chain? Who's second, third, fourth, this? And this is what they do in an area. And of course, we're not talking hundreds of bulls. Usually you're talking a dozen bulls, maybe, and they know where they're at. Why is that so important to them? Why? See, you have to understand all these things. And they know how many bulls roughly will breed a cow when she comes into heat. You see, guys think, okay, this bull has 8 cows, this one has 3, and this bull has 16, whatever. What people don't realize, Sam, is that cow will be bred by 4 to 6 different.
Hey, Paul, I seem to have lost you. All right, y'all, looks like we are having some technical difficulties, so while I get that sorted out, let's hear a quick word from one of my partners. All right, y'all, we all know there's folks out there who are successful year after year rocking a set of bargain bin Walmart camo. However, a full layering system of premium hunting clothes can make a huge impact on your comfort level when you're spending time deep in the backcountry, and can really be the difference between going longer and harder or just going home. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I personally can't afford to drop $3,000 or even more on a full set of premium hunting gear. Now, that's why I'm excited to tell y'all about Scree gear. Not only is Scree as capable and durable as any of the other premium lines out there, it also comes in at a price point that won't leave you too broke to put in for tags. Scree's patterns use the science behind perception and fractal concealment and have been designed by one of the foremost concealment experts out there. He's designed for militaries, law enforcement, and special forces in the US and around the world. Not only are their patterns incredibly versatile for any sort of terrain, but their layering systems allow you to pack a minimal amount of gear for maximum effect. So whether you're side-hilling across rocky debris in the baking desert sun or crawling over snow-covered deadfall high up in the frozen Rockies, Scree's versatile layering system has you covered. Literally. And if that's not enough, for that added layer of confidence, Scree offers an outfitter and military discount, a limited lifetime warranty on all their gear, and free returns on new gear until you find the perfect fit. Even better, you can get 10% off all orders from the Scree store by using code COUNTRY10. Check out that Scree discount along with discounts from other awesome outdoor companies by visiting my partners page at livingcountryinthecity.com/partners. All right, so we are back after some Idahoan internet technical difficulties here. You know, technology is pretty amazing. It can bring people together from many states across, but then it can cut them off very suddenly as well.
It was just an intermission.
There we go. There you go.
Halftime.
But yeah, as we when we left off, we kind of we were talking about, okay, say somebody has the mechanics of how to work a diaphragm call, but they're looking to then start learning some of these sequences. Where would be a good place to start for someone that is wanting to then up their game with the elk calling and really start out learning these variety of sequences that kind of comprise the elk language, if you will?
Well, yeah, if you want to use a mouth reed, then you have to use the proper reed for yourself. Reeds come in 2 sizes. They come in 1/2 inch and they come in 5/8. The old school reeds, like what I was brought up with, Larry Jones, Wayne Carlton, reeds like that, they were really the main manufacturers back then. And there's been a huge introductory since then, but they were all 5/8. There was no such thing as a 1/2 inch reed. And what that means is you're measuring the frame. The exposed latex as it's clamped down in the frame. If you were to take the reeds that you have today and you measured the inside from horseshoe to horseshoe opening, you'll notice you either have a 1/2 inch or you have a 5/8. That's the only way they come. Even today, that's it. And so some of the tape that surrounds them can be larger. They have quite a fan going around them. Some will be a clover leaf. Some are large clover leaves, such as Primos carries, and some are real small, which are like the mini domes that Primos carries. Rocky Mountain, Bugling Bull Game Calls, he has that style too on just a few of them. But that tape is what interferes with some people at times. So go with a 1/2 inch reed. And the reason I say that, a 1/2 inch reed will fit anybody. It doesn't mean it's the best reed for you, but it will work. And you will not have any issues with it, whether you have a large palate, a medium palate, or a small palate. Most of the people in the world have a small to average palate, meaning you need to use a 1/2 inch, so it won't feel like it's filling your mouth. If you have a 5/8 in there, you would think 1/8 of an inch can't be that big a deal. It is. It will sit in there, and you can't hardly do anything with it, so you feel you have to bend it, tweak it, shape it, trim the tape. You don't need to do any of that if the reed is the proper reed. So getting the proper reed for yourself is really a huge, huge thing. And so once you get a 1/2-inch reed, which I would recommend for everyone, because even people with a large palate can use a 1/2-inch, but people with a smaller palates can't use a 5/8 worth beans. They struggle, and then they get frustrated and they quit because they think all reeds are like that, but they're not. So start with a 1/2-inch reed and get a single latex. So you want to go with a real soft latex because they're the most user-friendly. They're the easiest to use. They require the least amount of tongue pressure. And so by starting off on the right track there, it can make a huge difference. As a matter of fact, just as a plug, we have the ElkNut app. On the ElkNut app, when you first open that up, it will go into mouth reed use, how to select the right reed for you, how to look at the different tensions and some of the companies that carry those reeds. And so we try to show people where that reed goes in your mouth, exactly the fit, what portion of your tongue touches that reed for each individual elk sound. Sometimes use the tip, sometimes use the center of your tongue. So we go through all of that and show it to you and before you ever get into any of the elk sounds. So, it's some piece of good information if anyone is out there wondering if anything like that is available.
Well, so say then they've picked out their reed, they've practiced, they've got generally got these individual sounds down. What's then the next step after that as far as getting down these sequences to talk to the elk?
What they've gotten down is a cow call and a bugle. That's all they've gotten
Pretty
down.
much, yeah.
Yeah, they have no idea about the different pitches and the tempo, the volume changes. They don't realize there's a bunch of different bugles that send a different message, meaning they're changing the emotion of the bugle. They don't recognize that. So the first thing a person generally does is learn how to cow call. It's the easiest sound to make. And so we're not going to go in how to use that and make up for all of that because it would take too much time. The instruction is out there. The app has it. We have other information. But basically, you want to be able to choose the right mouth reed and start with the single reed no matter who you are, especially a newer person, and learn how to use the reed by using the center of your tongue as the contact point on the latex. It's the fastest way how to learn. It really is. It's just super quick. So most people will try to use the tip of their tongue, and they're putting too much pressure on it. Start with the center. And just for a quick point, people always wonder, where does that reed actually go? Well, here's where the reed goes. So people know real quick. Take the tip of your tongue and touch the inside of your gum line and your front teeth where they touch, right where they meet. You do that with the tip of your tongue. Now take and slide the tip of your tongue back 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8, and you feel that little ridge or that little cleft before it gets into your palate. That's where the front of the reed goes, right there. Then it slants up. 20, 25 degrees, and that tape on it now slides into place, and that's what dams the air up and touches your palate. So the horseshoe opening is right there where your front teeth and your gum line meet. Right, you can move it back 1/16 here or there, left or right, up or back, but no more. Otherwise, you shove it too far back and you get a gagging reflex. So you want to make sure that when you put that reed in your mouth, if it's a newer reed, you want to nibble up that tag or that tape really good so it gets soft like a cloth T-shirt. If you don't, you're going to get this sound here. That means air is going over the top of your reed, the tape, and under your palate. So it's going between the two. You need to dam it up 100%. So all the air passes at the bottom of the latex, top of your tongue. Now you're controlling the air supply, and you're going to be able to call and get pure notes. Otherwise, you're going to get half and half of the latex trying to squeal or squeak on you. So if you're having that issue as a listener, you know right now that is what your problem is, and you need to correct or adjust that so you can get pure notes from your mouth reed.
Okay, so then I've got the mouth reed selected. I've got all this picked out. I'm able to make those basic notes. What can I then expect to start hearing when I go out into the elk woods? Say I'm bow hunting because that's what we're passionate about during the rut. So let's say mid-September, I'm heading out to do an over-the-counter hunt in Idaho. I'm heading out. I'm walking into the woods. I'm excited. I'm gonna hunt me an elk.
You sound like a greenhorn.
Oh yeah. Where do I as far as calling, where do I start?
Well, first you have to know how to call. So you bought a mouth reed, and so now you've gone through the necessary steps that you can use a reed to some extent. So once you start understanding the different sounds of the elk, which is part of learning to read, you have to understand when you're going to practice. Understand the sound you're practicing. Don't go, oh, there's a cow call. No. Say, I'm practicing a cow that is socializing with other elk. That's how you have to think. Then you put the right emotion into it. You're putting the right feeling. And I'm just talking like you and I are talking. But if I started getting upset, I raise my voice and the emotion gets a little more intense. This is what cows are doing. So when you learn, if you're going to practice a social cow sound, you're going to go like this. And you're going to get the right, emotion behind it. You're going to feel, okay, this is nothing exciting. I don't need to do any dancing around with it. That's it. But when a cow starts getting separated and doesn't answer back, then you're going to hear this sound. Because they're not responding back. So now when you're practicing that sound, which is a kind of a regathering sound, or come back over this way, you're getting too far. I don't know where you are. I don't see you and I don't hear you. That's what you're practicing. So as you practice that sound, that cow call, you know what the message is you're sending. That's how you learn. It's like if you're going to learn Spanish and you're learning a word and nobody tells you what that word or two words mean, and you're just going through the motions. You have no idea. So, but someone says, here's what you're saying. Now you're putting the right feeling behind it. You know how, if you're going to say, I hate you or I love you, you see, you're putting the right tone. And that's what you're doing with the elk sound. Now, if that same cow was not getting any response, then she's going to lengthen it out. She can't find him, so she's trying to call him back. Can you guys hear me? And so as you practice it, you get the idea of what is the message you're sending. That's how you practice. So now as you practice this and you get in touch with what they sound like, what the message is, what the bull sounds are, now I'm going out there as Joe Hunter, as you presented the question. If I'm going to use an elk sound, I know exactly what I'm saying. So if I receive a response back, I'm like, okay, I'm listening for what they're saying now. I'm not just hearing a bugle and go, oh, there's a bull over there. I used to do that years ago. Who didn't? But once you start getting an idea of the emotion or the tone of that bugle, remember, this was a location bugle. You can tell there's really nothing to it. And this is an elk in search of, they're trying to find other elk. They don't know where they're at. Now, if they find one and one responds back, he's going to go. And so you see, he just shortens it up and lets you know that he heard you. Now, if an elk is upset because you're another bull bugling in his area and he has a cow coming into heat, you're going to hear him do more of something like this. You see, he puts a little bit of anger behind it. He doesn't like you're in the area, so he's telling you to stay back. You notice the three different tones, and that is the message you're sending another elk. Now, if another elk really gets upset, he's going to lip ball. And so he's going to give more of a guttural sound like this. You see, that's the top of the anger chain. So you start listening to those four sounds. And now when you hear one or the other, become familiar with them. Practice them. You know what they are. The app shows you every one of those sounds. Exactly. And how to make that sound. And you're going to listen to them over and over and get it built into your memory. So when you're in the woods and you hear this, or this, you know what to produce back. You know you're going to communicate with them. You're talking with them. You're not just going, I heard an elk, I'm going to bugle. I heard an elk, I'm going to cow call. He's giving a lip ball because you bugled and now you cow call just right there, right next. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. This is how people blow opportunities on public land over-the-counter bulls because they get hammered so much. They read what an imposter has to offer, and they know immediately suspicion is aroused in them, and away they go. They're not communicating with them. They're not saying the right things, the things that would make sense in that encounter. So as you learn these things, and I jump into the woods and I start using that location bugle, or I'm trying to use some cow calls in relation to a bugle as I'm moving through the woods like it's a natural movement, a lot of times other elk will respond to that. And they just give away their position. That's all you're trying to do is find out where they're at. And so you look for these things. You see where I gave a location bugle? And how do you know when a bull's given a location bugle? So you can represent the same thing. He's on the move. When an elk is moving and calling, moving and calling, moving and calling, with that location sound, he is in search of. Okay? Now, if this bull stopped, or a bull stopped, and you walked up the mountain and you're going up there, and you got a bull that's bugling from one spot, and he bugles again. Minutes later, he bugles again, and you're still heading up. He was a half a mile away when you first barely heard him. He's now bugled 7 or 8 times. Nothing's answered him. That's a bull advertising his position. He's trying to draw cows to him. He has not moved, so he's not locating. He's advertising. He's staying there so these cows, when he finds them or hear him, they come to him. That's how that bulls build a harem. In most cases, they call and elk come. They do not go running over every little draw and ridge and trying to find an elk and draw and add them to the harem. No, they call and they come. That's how they do this. So you're looking for these different sounds. If this were to happen, now I'm going to give that bull what he wants. Now, if I get a bull that's locating and moving, one of my best odds is to challenge that bull real quick. Just scream at him. Why am I challenging him? It tells him I have a hot cow. What is that bull looking for? He's not just looking for elk. He's looking for the bulls or the herds that have the cow coming into heat. That's his only interest. Just like when a big buck, big muley buck or whitetails, they're hitting little doe groups here, one here, one here. They'll stay there for minutes if there's no hot doe, and off they move until they find the group with the hot doe. So they're not just looking for a doe. They're looking for the hot ones. That's the ones that they have the urge for. They want to breed these. They want to be around them. They want to scent check the area. So understanding the whole gamut here, it's not I'm going to walk out and I'm just going to bugle and I know nothing else and I hope a bull comes running to me. No, you're going to be one of those guys that have your tag in your pocket when the hunt is over. So you need to educate yourself and understand the different times bulls will use a different sound and why they use it. So now you know what to do, how to handle that situation. It's the same as if you walked out there and hunted for 2 or 3 days and never heard a sound. No matter how much you called, they may never made a peep, but you knew there were elk there. You need to know how to call those elk in. So that's one of our fortes is how to call in elk that don't call back because nothing's ready. No rut action. These elk are quiet, but they're very killable at this time. So anyway, when I jump into the woods and I'm going to use sounds, it all depends on what's going on out there. But locate bugle is probably my number one choice because I like to cover ground. I'm not sitting in a water hole or a wallow or a mineral lick or I'm sitting at the feeding bedding area. There's nothing wrong with those things. But I've kind of like grown past that because I absolutely love the challenge of beating elk in their own game by using their sounds against them. But other hunters don't need to all do that, but it works for us, and we are 100% on killing elk with our bows for 27 years out of 27 years on public land over-the-counter tags. And so I'm not going to fix something that's not broke, and I really enjoy doing that. So that's my style, but I may recommend something different for a new guy if he just wants to kill an elk, and he doesn't matter what it is. See, when I'm calling for elk and I'm hunting, Sam, I'm tailoring all my sounds toward bulls. So I'm not using a lot of cow sounds. I'm not doing blind cold calling. I'm not using a creative cow sequence. I don't do those types of setups like I did years and years ago just so I could see elk. Now I'm targeting all my sounds. So my odds are much higher that I'm going to draw bulls in first because we shoot like 5s and 6s. That's all we want because we are that effective at pulling bulls to us. And so, but if people don't have that confidence and those years of experience, they need to start like the rest of us did and just get elk at least to come in close enough so you have those opportunities. Because just because you have an elk there at 15 yards or 35 yards, it doesn't mean you're going to take it. I'll tell you right now, a lot of little things come up. Their position, their angle, brush in the way. All of a sudden the wind switched. I mean, there's a lot of little things that can happen. So that's why I like to tell newer folks to make sure that when you get that first legal elk, other than a calf, it's legal, I know, but I never recommend people to shoot calves. Let them grow up a little bit. That's just my opinion. But go ahead and take a nice healthy cow. But if you're wanting to just call elk, and you want to bring elk to you, your first hunting trip out, there's 2 things you do. Obviously, you're going to have to learn how to use a reed and make some sounds. But number 1, use a cold calling sequence. Cold calling sequence is best used the first 2 hours of the morning, and you're going to be anywhere near the feeding area where elk are, within earshot. They could be hundreds of yards away, even a half a mile away, and they can come to you. So you don't need to be on top of them. Then once 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning hits, they're going to be in their bedding area. So get to where you think the bedding area may be, whether you saw elk go into the timber and they never came out, or you glassed them from way off, or you have ideas about where they should be bedding. I like to try to get within a couple hundred yards of it. If I can get a hair closer, I will. Because remember, we're talking quiet elk here. They're not saying anything. We saw a bull go in there and he's got 5 or 6 cows, or we just saw a bunch of cows go in and then we know they're in there. Get on the peripheral of it, within a couple hundred yards. If you can get a hair closer, go ahead, but don't get in on it. You want to pull them out of it. Now you go to what I call as a creative cow calling sequence. And all this is on the app, even in video form. It shows you the exact sequence of sounds being used. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to plug it, but a lot of people, they don't have a good idea of a concept unless they see it visually. So it does help, and then they hear the actual sounds. But when you get to the bedding area, you have a captive audience. They're there from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock that evening. They get up and mill around in water, but they stay right there. So you got like 8 hours of they don't move. They're there. And if you go through this creative cow calling sequence and really mix it up, talk to each other like you're a little group there, you can't believe how it pulls them over to you because they're a herd animal. They don't know who you are. Remember in the beginning? They know each other by their sound. And they also know each other by sight or smell. But in this particular case, you got the wind. They don't know who you are. They hear you repetitiously over there, off and on for hours. Here they come. And you don't want them to see you, and you don't want to see them until it's time to draw your bow. But they'll come sneaking in. And they just, next thing you know, here they come. I've had elk come in and then leave. 30 minutes later, here comes other elk. They leave, and then all of a sudden, who knows what time goes by, but here comes other elk. I mean, bulls, cows, everything. You just never know what's going to show up. But the point is it flat works, and you don't have to run through the mountains to do this. Get into those specific areas. Those two things, cold calling near the feeding, go to the creative calling where you're going to anchor down and stay there a while and have the elk come to you. Between those two calling setups, you give yourself 3 or 4 days, and I promise you guys will draw your bow back at least 6 times, at least. I mean, this is how effective it is, and I'm talking over the counter. So, when you're going to go hunt an area like that, you want to make sure you're not sitting right on top of, camps all sitting there, people going everywhere. I try to find, areas that are a little bit secluded, and usually I can find those within 1.5 miles of a road. So it's not like they're like finding a needle in a haystack. Not at all. They're everywhere. I mean, we can even talk about that later, but I can show you the fastest way to find feeding areas and bedding areas when you're ready to cover that part.
No, that'll definitely be something great to touch on. So this cold calling sequence, you're saying that, when they're feeding in the first 2 hours of the morning and before they're ready to head to their beds, what does that consist of? What are you trying to communicate with that cold calling sequence? That
there's a group over here that they don't know, and it only has to be if you're one person. All you have to sound like is a couple of elk, 2, 3. If there's 2 of you, get 30 yards apart and call. And again, make sure your setup is rock solid. That the elk that come your way have to come within your shooting range before they can see where the source is coming from. If there's 3 of you or 4 of you, kind of get in a triangle if there's 3 of you, and all 3 of you can be 30 yards apart or so, and you each call, and you all have your little thing. And I always recommend to people, if you know you're going to be hunting with multiple people, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and you don't want to separate. Some people will, and they're in a tag team group. There's only 2 of them. Some like to be together because maybe it's 2 kids or a good friend and a 15-year-old son, and so you want all 3 to be there. Get in that little triangle. And each one will call and practice at home how you're going to call. So each one you can critique each other and go, wait. Oh, you're being like predictable. It sounds like a tape recorder out there. I want you to mix up the tone, the sound, the volume, soft, a little bit louder. And you're going to hear me call, and then you hear my buddy call. And once you get in sync, it's like, wow. We are good. I mean, we sound good. And so you sound believable out there. And then if an elk is starting to come in, it's going to only come in, one of you is going to see it because you're in a triangle. And the one that hears it or sees something coming or knows something's coming, they can hear it walking or they see it, he shuts up. And the other 2 go, hey, wait a minute. So-and-so hasn't made a sound. There's something, he's onto something. So the other 2 kind of keep going, make sure they're hidden, and do whatever it takes to keep this elk coming in. And so, you can do this in a rectangle if there's 4 of you. And so you can spread out, just make sure the wind's in your favor and you're in a good tight setup per person, and you never know who the elk's going to come to. And these are super deadly tactics to do out there. And the elk do the moving. That is advantage hunter every time, as opposed to the hunter trying to sneak in on elk he thinks over there. And because you're in their home ground. They see every little movement. If you took your buddy, Sam, one of your friends, and you put him 50 yards in the cover and you stayed back and you just watch and you say, okay, I want you to try to sneak in and I don't want to see you. He wouldn't move 10 feet before you caught a flash of something. You see, and because there's just not that much cover out there. So it gives you the advantage as a hunter that you see the elk too. And so if the cover is thin and you're trying to make your way to one, remember that. If those elk see you, you have to listen to them, because they'll make a certain sound if they see you, because they don't know if you're a possible threat or what. They were unsure what they saw because they're not winding you. But they'll either give you that nervous grunt, or he may even growl at you, and because he might think it's another bull. And so they'll just give you that deep growl. And if you don't respond back or say anything, they're gone, because they don't know if it's a wolf, it's a bear, a mountain lion. They have no idea what kind of predators out there. But when it's a real elk, they'll usually get a satisfying response or a visual from the growl or the nervous grunt. And so, in that nervous grunt, if you hear that, you're going to hear that one note. That's it. If he growls at you as you're slipping in and you think you're being sneaky and you hear a bull go, that means you've been had. He knows you're there. So you need to say something to him so he thinks you're an elk, and calm him down. And see, that's the ticket right there. And a lot of guys don't realize that. They hear an elk sound out there. Oh, he's just right there. Okay, I'm so close. But if they get no satisfying response or a satisfying visual, they're gone. They're out of there. And they don't know what happened. They have no idea what took place. And so that's one of the really good things about calling elk and understanding elk. You should know when something works, the reason why, and you should know the reason why it didn't. Not like, God, they just didn't want to play today. They didn't cooperate. Blah, it's everything, but you have no idea really why. Once you start being that guy that knows why something failed, that's when you start learning. That's when you get smart. You get elk smarts, because now you know what to avoid and what not to. So, this is how you build this thing. Like I said in the beginning, it's kind of a process that you go through and you start understanding these things. So take advantage of some of the information that's out there today that we didn't have 50 years ago, to cut that learning curve way back and to actually experience, some success right now on your first trips out there.
So with the cold calling, you're looking to make yourself sound like a group of elk, and generally, so does that tend to consist mostly of those social cow calls we talked about earlier? Are there bugles thrown into that?
Yeah, you can. That's an option. You can give a bugle into it if you like. The only reason you would put a bugle into it is to say there's a bull there. Now, if you turned it around and you showed the bull was trying to show that he had, a cow coming into heat, then he's going to have to display himself and use sounds that shows he has a hot cow. But that's a totally different sequence that you would use. That's going to basically target bulls and eliminate cows to come in. And that's one of my sequences that I recommend for people that want to target bulls only. But so when you're using these cow sounds, yes, all you need is a reed, and you're going to cast your sound to the left, cast your sound to the right. You're going to call through your tube. You're going to turn around and call if you're a lone hunter. Here's a cow call. Now watch the difference between this and no tube, and then I'm going to add the tube. So it changes things, and you sound like a different elk. So here's just some standard social sounds. You notice the difference between the tube and that without the tube. It's more echoey. It gives a little more distance. And when you start pointing that bugle in different directions and then take it away and make a couple more, you just sound like different elk. You don't sound like the same one. And you can chirp with it like maybe you're more of a calf, kind of a... See, that's more what calves do. They don't have that mature cow sound. They don't have that. And so they just snap it off, and they're called chirps. Calf chirps. So you can mix it up. Those are the things you want to learn how to do with a mouth reed before you ever get into the woods. And so it's really easy to replicate 2 or 3 elk. And that's all you have to be. You don't have to be 20, just a few. That's it. And you just keep planting the seed, to rustle in the brush, kind of stomping the ground like they're feeding, dinking around. And then I like to quiet down. after 5 or 6 minutes, Sam, and don't say anything. Give it a minute or two, go by, and then just a little bit of murmuring back and forth, just real soft cow calls. To your left, to your right, real soft if I'm by myself. And what does that tell these other elk? They haven't moved. They're still right there. Do it again. Pick it back up. Let it pause out for a few minutes. And after about 10, 15 minutes of doing this, these other elk realize you're bedded there. They're just communicating back and forth, making sure, because they're not bedded on top of each other. They may be 50 yards apart. I mean, elk are funny animals. Sometimes they are bedded real close by, so others aren't. And so I like to mimic that and make it as natural sounding and realistic as possible. You see, it's the same as any sequence. I don't try to just get real rapid and carried away and stupid sounding, because then you're going off the charts. You may think you sound good, and it's good, but it's not natural. It's not what you normally hear out there. So I try to tone it down and keep it very natural. Even those soft sounds, they'll carry 200 or 300 yards easily for an elk. We may not hear it that far, but they do. So once you're doing that, you cannot believe how it pulls elk in. Sometimes they come in vocal, and they'll start bugling it. But listen to them. When they bugle, he's going to be trying to call you to him. Anytime a bull bugles your cow call, he's calling you to him. But he may also come towards you. So as he's coming and he's calling, invite him over. Give him that one sound which I told you, which is asking him. It's an assembly. Come on over. Regathering. You see how you changed your tone from this? You see, it has totally different meaning to the elk. And so once you lengthen that out, and you drop it off, this is saying, come on over, come on over. This is what you're telling him. So see, or her. And that's what's so cool about it. You start talking elk when you're out there. And so when they respond to you, you have just sold to them 100% that you are the real deal. See, most people don't do that. They just keep the cow calling. They just keep going whatever, because that's all they know. So to have that confidence as a new hunter when you go out there, learn these three little cow sounds, what they mean, what their message is, and the 3 or 4 bull sounds. Just understand what they are. You may not even use them all, but you understand them. So when you hear them, you know what's going on and what they're saying to you, so you can respond back in a likely manner, and one that keeps them calm and keeps them coming.
Well, so speaking of that, and keeping them calm and coming, you mentioned the nervous grunt and the growl for when the jig is up, if you will.
To an extent. I mean, they just know you're there.
What are some different responses in a situation like that would tend to either calm that bull down or those cows down, or what would be some various responses you could use in a situation like that where you're hearing that sound?
Well, in the growl, in the instance of the growl, you're usually pretty darn close. You're 70 yards or less, or else he doesn't even bother with it. That's what I've noticed over the years. And so cow call's the safest sound to use at that time, because he doesn't know what you are, has no idea. You snuck in. Remember, you were going in on his bugling, and it got just a little bit nasty enough that you were making sounds, or he saw a flash of something. And he wants to know what you are. That's basically, and if it's a bull, he's warning you to stay back. And so that's why you're getting that, that's why you're getting that sound. And so I like to cow call right then. And I usually will let him know. I cow call right after he says it. I don't wait 2 minutes and cow call. I let him know I heard him, and it's only me. It's only a cow. Well, here's a seed you've planted in his mind of excitement. He doesn't know who you are. So there's a cow, yes, but it's not one of his cows. It's not a cow I'm familiar with. So this automatically raises his eyebrows, so to speak, and it's like, I wonder who that is. You see, it calms him down. So in this instance, I would go ahead and use a cow call, calm him down, and feel free to pop and snap a few things as you move around. Don't be quiet. Just pop things. Make it natural. And you can actually just start walking to him if you're a lone hunter until you finally get to the distance you need. He isn't going anywhere. As a matter of fact, there's a good chance once you cow call, he tries to call you to him. He may give you that short roundup. You guys are close. He may even just give you some chuckling. He's giving you a direction. He's inviting you to come on up to him. You see, and that's what they do. This is elk talk. This is the elk world. You're not going to hear a locator bugle from him. You're not going to hear the challenge bugle. You're not going to get a lip ball out of him. You're not going to get any of that. You're going to get communication. He's going to talk to you just like if you were talking to somebody else out there. So realize that. He may even start raking. he may start raking and displaying because he's encouraging you to come on up, and he wants to show off to you that he is a dominant structured animal worth being with, part of his group or his harem or even his first cow. But this is the things they do during the rut. So look for all those little signs. So if you get the growl, that's kind of how you handle it. If you get the nervous grunt, what were you doing for him to give you the nervous grunt? Were you bugling and he got to a certain point? Were you cow calling? Were you doing both? Those things you have to consider. That is how you're going to play it out. That's not one little thing you do every time. If you did try to force something down his throat every time, I would cow call and run right at him. That's how I've killed, I believe it's been 3 bulls by doing that. Most of the time, I'm working them and they're coming in. But there are times when you're going to get a bull and he hits you with that nervous grunt and he can stick around. He may pace around. I've had him pace around for 10 minutes and keep giving it, and just playing with him. But if you want to kill that elk, say it was a cow that did it and you don't want a cow, you might as well just leave because it's not going to turn out good. So you get out of there. And sometimes when I do cow, when a cow is doing it, and I just, and I know it's not going to turn out good, I leave and I'll cow call my way out of there and just take off, making them think that there was the elk there, but it left. And so it doesn't pursue her. She's not pursuing me to some extent. She just kind of wanders off and away she goes. But if it's a bull, I'm usually going to go ahead and cow call and run right at him. As long as I got the cover and I got the wind, of course, I'm not running through an opening. I'm just going to cow call just like when I used to call cows in all the time with a bugle. You can call cows in, and when they're starting to come in, Sam, they make a special sound saying, "I'm coming." That's what they do. They get very excited over it. And this is cows that are accepting the invite, not cows that are just wandering around. This is one saying, "I'm coming," and they'll make a sound like this. And they'll come running right at you. And that's what they do. And so when you get 6, 7, 8 of them, 3 of them, and they're all doing it, you ought to see it. It's a riot. And I mean, they're just, and they're just coming in. And so years and years ago, I can't even remember the first time I heard it. I mean, long time ago, I started using it against bulls. And when I get close enough and use a cow call, and because there's times you're going to use a cow call out there and the bull just goes nuts. You bugle and he shuts up and he don't move. Then there's the opposite. You'll cow call and he will not express himself at all. Nothing. Deader than a doornail. You bugle, he goes bananas. And so, you feel him out. But when you get a bull going like that with a cow call and he's calling you to him, and you notice after 2 or 3 times, after a minute, 90 seconds gone by, he hasn't moved, he's got cows and he's not going to come. So you got to take it to him. Now, if it's a satellite, most cases you're going to notice a calling where he's excited, he's already answered you, he's breaking the distance. So now you got to find a place to set up because you're going to call this bull all the way to you. But the other one, you got to go at him. Now, if I heard the nervous grunt, I'm close, he's close, I am not even going to worry about this bull coming to me. I am going to chatter that chirp and go right at him, and don't mess around because he thinks it's the cow. He just asked for a satisfying response or an identification, a visual. That's what he said with the nervous grunt. It was a nervous reaction of the present situation. Maybe you called him to that point and he can't see you, and he's all right, I want to see you before I come any further. Or he saw a movement, or he was bedded and you're walking through the woods and all of a sudden you sprung on him out of nowhere and he jumps up and hits you with that real quick, and like, what are you? He doesn't know. So you can calm him down real fast. But to sit back and call and do nothing, 9 times out of 10, you will not get him to run towards you and come into bow range. You could also, you could give him a short roundup bugle. You could give him a chuckle, which is an invite to come on over this way. You see, there are things to communicate with, but 9 times out of 10, he's pretty nervous and he's not going to do it. So I have found over the years, which you asked, what's the best tactic? Run right at them, cow calling, and they just stay right there. They think the cow's going to come busting out, and once you start getting close, that's when you knock an arrow and just start slipping, moving through, and hope he starts raking. That's your best alternative, because then he's not paying attention to the situation. If he doesn't, just keep slipping through, moving, and if you have to, just turn around. If you you're 25 yards away and you still can't see him good, just turn around and just give a soft cow call. That's it. And many times he'll just step right out. I've even given the nervous grunt. I've even got close enough where I still couldn't get a shot. And so I just hit them. Just like that. And they step right out. looking because you're asking them the same thing they just asked you, but now you're right here instead of back there. And you're like, okay, I've made it this far. I need to see you. I want to make sure now. And out they pop. They don't come any closer, but they usually will pop right into the open, or at least enough vitals. So remember those little things. Those are the things that punch tags right there. More so than I sat back and bugled and cow called, and these elk just came running right to me. I heard them. I went home. It really doesn't happen like that. If it does, well, God bless you, because it don't happen very often. Oh, yeah. You work them and you work them and you work them. But when you have all these little things in your arsenal, it's like there's nothing you can't handle when you're out there. And that's why podcasts like this and information is so valuable, because it could take you 10 years before you pick up one of these points and assemble them all together. And now you start getting a complete picture of it. And so, guys need to really listen to this stuff closely, because there's so much more than just saying, I'm going to cow call or I'm going to bugle out there.
So what are some other maybe common situations that an elk hunter might find themselves in? We talked, like you said, about surprising an elk, and they give you that nervous grunt. We talked about a little bit about those location bugles and the different types of responses from those. What are some, maybe, you're they're in their bed and you're stalking in. What are some situations you might find yourself in around that?
Well, if you're glassing elk, and because it's that open, and you spot something and you can slip in quietly, I'm not going to call. I'm going to try to use the thermals to my advantage, as well as the undulation of the terrain. Unfortunately, most of the country I hunt is thick timber by choice. I've hunted 7 states, and I do everything I can to get into the thick timber. And if I find elk out of it, I wait for them to get into it, because that's where I'm going to get them, right there. I know trying to call elk that are standing in the open, your odds just go way down, because so many times they want to see what they're hearing, even though you're hidden in the timber at the timber's edge. It's not high odds production. Good results just don't happen. It's very rare. And so I like to get them in the cover. But if I'm working, let's say I go into the woods and I hear multiple bulls bugling, and they're on their own. I'm just happening to cross a ridge. I'm 3/4 of a mile in, a mile, whatever the case may be. And I get in there and I hear multiple bulls bugling. I already know for a fact there's a hot cow. That's the only reason competition arises in the woods. Outside of that, you have a lone bull bugle here, a lone bull bugle there, and nothing, blah, blah, blah. But not rut-fest action. When you have several bulls bugling in one spot, that's a breeding sequence. That's what's taking place there. So I try to get a couple of 100 yards away from the action. I already know I'm not calling the herd bull in. I already know that. He's completely out of my mind. He's going to answer everything I do, but he's not going to come. He won't leave his cows unattended to come to me like the satellites will, who have nothing to defend. So I know when I set up, I'm going to probably have a 5 or a small 5x6. You never know what's going to come from what the satellites are, because I don't see them. It's timber. So this is a real common setting sometimes, is you're going to hear multiple bulls bugling. So if you just want to kill a bull, right there, get in there and imitate the breeding sequence. That's what you're going to do. That's what brought the satellites there in the first place. And here they come trotting over, because they also want to scent check this area. They want to, because you're producing the same sounds that herd bull is doing, that told them there's a hot cow there. So now you're going to go through your little sequence of sparingly very few cow sounds, but you're going to go into more bull sounds. You're going to go into just short lip balls, some panting, some glunking, raking the tree. That shows you have a hot cow present. Bulls do not do that unless there's a hot cow in their presence. They won't make any of those sounds like that. So to imitate that sequence, you're going to pull that satellite right away. Now, if you want to kill the herd bull, you're going to have to get to the herd bull to kill him. Now, in many cases, the satellites are between you and the herd bull. Why are they like that? Because that's the way the wind's going. They can smell the scent of those hot cows or the hot cow in there. They're not on the backside where they smell nothing. No, they get right there where they can enjoy the scent, and it drives them nuts. Their testosterone levels are rising. They're going crazy. They're bugling. They're trying to call the cow out of there. They're not trying to fight the herd bull, not at all, or they go right in there and challenge him. So they're trying to stay back. You'll notice when they bugle, they're not giving challenging bugles. They're giving more of a roundup bugle. And many times you'll notice those satellites will even try to call the cows away, and they'll use a couple of cow sounds. And you'll hear them, and you'll hear the bull, and he'll sound like this right here. You notice how those cow sounds rolled right into the bugle? No hesitation. None. You know it's from the same animal. There wasn't cow calls, pause, bugle. No, it's all one. Monolithic, so to speak. And so you'll hear him do this, and he's trying to call the cow out of there. So see, I use those techniques. So if I'm trying to kill the herd bull, I have to push those satellites out of the way, get them out of my way. And once I get in close, it depends how aggressive that herd bull was. If I hear him bugling and he's kind of, I've heard a lot of them. So I know when they're super aggressive on full tilt or not. And if I don't think he's right there yet, I'm going to get him there, but he's not there yet. I try to call his cow from him. He knows I'm not talking to him. I'm trying to call that cow. And what is he going to do when I give those couple cow sounds and that roundup bugles what I gave? He is going to come over me and challenge me and tell me to get the crud out of Dodge. And when I'm waiting for him, as soon as he does, I'm going to give him about a level 5 challenge, telling him to stay back. I don't want to give him everything I got because I can't build momentum then and get him really angry. So I'm going to give him one more like this. Like, don't push me around. Don't tell me what to do. I am not leaving right here. And then I immediately try to call the cow back. Usually, that's all it takes. It's a done deal. Here he comes. Because remember, you're close now. You're right here. You're not 200 yards away. So when I'm in that situation, you make it convenient for him. And I should mention, I had to get to the herd bull to do this, right? So I had to clear a path. So in order to clear a path, the simplest way to clear a path to a herd bull or to a bull, and there's other elk in the way, whether they're bulls or cows, bugle your way to them. You adding another bugle into the mix does mean squat to the herd bull. The herd bull has 2 or 3 satellites or whatever is there, harassing the tar out of him. And what is he doing? Nothing. He's not moving. He's been right there. You know why? He's where he wants to be. He's at his destination. That's why everything's coming from one spot. So now I try to get back 300 or 400 yards, and I'm going to bugle about every 50, 75 yards. And I'm going to bugle my way right to him. And as I get closer, those satellites all split to the side. They don't leave. They get out of the way. Because how many bulls have you ever been able to bugle your way right to them and they stand there so you can arrow them? Like none. They run. They move. They don't like that. And so the cows move too. Everything. They just start opening up the corridor, which the herd bull is not standing right in the midst of them all. He's usually on a defense area, and he's over there, but he's not going to run from you. He's the one that doesn't run. Because you only have to do this, and still, you're probably still going to be 200 yards from the herd bull. But those other bulls will keep that 200 yards from you. See, they keep pushing back. So now you've plowed and opened the way. You've opened the Red Sea. That's what you're going to do. And now you have an avenue to go right there. Nothing's going to see you. Nothing's going to blow your cover. Now it's just the wind in your face and the cover, and now you perform those tactics. Like I said, sometimes I just start cow calling, and if he gets excited, he starts roundup bugling me in, I run right at him and try to kill him with the cow call. I just run right at him giving the cow call. Now, if I get to a certain spot and I can't go any closer, but I'm like right on top of him, but there's a small opening, the minute he calls for that cow again, now I'll run a challenge right over the top, making him think another bull slipped in and is trying to grab this cow. And the minute I show that defense action and I bugle over him when he tries to call the cow, I'm showing him that this cow I have, who he has no idea who it is, he doesn't know her by his sound, that she's hot. She's coming into heat. Otherwise, I don't get defensive over it. Nothing. So see, this is why you do these actions. Not do this, do that, and hope for the best. No, here's why you're doing it and what to expect. You see, because that's why he's defending those satellites. He's got a hot cow. 3 days ago, all those bulls were mingling with each other, and the cows. All those bulls were staying within 5 yards of each other. Couldn't care less because there's no hot cows. Nothing to breed. They get along. The minute one cow starts dripping and leaking and shows a sign of estrus, boom. The herd bull, the guy who's the kingpin there, now starts separating the group and pushing him back. And what's interesting to note when you watch this is one of the cool things about living in elk country and seeing all these things, is some of these younger bulls, they don't know what's going on. So he's over there hooking them and pushing them out, and they go a few yards, and they're like, we've been with you now for days. What's the problem here? I have the same urges as you. I'm not leaving. Well, then he gets nasty with them. He not only gives them the verbal retribution to get back, or else he starts hooking them and horning them hard. I mean, he can cause blood. But it takes him a couple of times to do it because these satellites don't know what the heck's going on. This isn't something that happens all the time. So they learn real quick, though. So when he starts separating the groups out, and the bulls, meaning the bulls, and pushes them out, now they stay back in that comfort zone where they know he's not going to bother them at that 125, 150 yard range. And that's why you see them bugling and bugling for that hot cow, and him allowing them there. They know the distance he'll tolerate and not leave his cows unattended, especially the hot one. See, and these other satellites that are there, they know that when the herd bull gets done, that they have a chance to mount that cow. Because as I mentioned earlier, we were kind of talking about it, is that one cow will be bred by 4 to 6 different bulls, not just the herd bull. Because once he's done his duty 4, 5, 6 times, he's totally spent. He cannot recuperate and keep breeding her. And she's in estrus for 12 to 15 hours, much more than he can handle. So now this cow goes out and seeks out these other bulls, the ones that she feels next in line through dominance and strength, and that's going to offer her a possible good, strong calf that endures tough times, winters, and so on. And so she seeks out these other bugles now, you see, and a lot of people don't realize that, and that's why these bulls will continually sit back there and bugle and bugle and bugle, not because they're trying to fight the bull. They're trying to advertise to that cow who they are and what they have to offer. So see, this is all really cool stuff when you start understanding how this whole picture falls into place here. So trying to get that herd bull, you open the way up. If you want the satellite, you go to the breeding sequence. If you get into a situation like that and you have a herd bull with cows and he's not being harassed by anything, but you see him go in the timber, you see him in the open and leave or whatever, you know he's there. Get in there and try to pull that bull away. How are you going to pull him away? Cow call? No. Now you go to what I call a slow play breeding sequence. So see, the breeding sequence before was directed at the satellites, correct, Sam?
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm directing this to the herd bull. So now I'm going in and I'm trying to get him within 150 yards or so of the herd bull. I don't want to go in after him because he's not calling. I'm cow calling. He's saying nothing. So I'm just giving you an idea. This is quiet times now. So this bull isn't saying anything. Why? No hot cow. So I have to make him come to me. How do I make that bull come to me? How do I draw on his curiosity? Well, we've killed over 80 herd bulls in 27 years. I'll show you one of the things we use. This is deadly on this. Absolutely deadly. And we're talking over-the-counter bulls here. We're not talking private property, special privileges, these elk never see people. No. And what's so cool about this one I'm going to share with you is there could be hunters within 300 yards of you and they'd never hear you. This is a really good one for close-knit. You know there's elk there, but there's people hunting. There's pressure. This is money. This is dynamite. So, I mean, it always gets me so excited because I call so many bulls in with it. I mean, I've been 16 for 16 on bulls and never lost one of them. Called every one of them in on over-the-counter public land by using techniques like this because this is the real deal out there. And so with this technique, I try to get close. 150 yards, I call that close. Close enough because I don't want to bust him out of his bedding area. If he never comes, you haven't hurt nothing. He's still sitting there. But here's what I do. I convince him I have a hot cow. So now I get in there. I just wait a little bit. I kind of nestle in there and get a good spot. I look my covering over, making sure that when he slips in, and he's coming, he's going to come, is that he has to get to my bow range. In my bow range, I like 40 yards or under. So I don't let him see where all this is happening outside of that distance. I make sure he has to come inside this, or he's going to nervous grunt me, or he's going to do something to say, I'm where I should see this action, and I see nothing. And so I eliminate that. That is huge to have a good setup. But it's people who want to see an animal coming 100, 125 yards away so they can get ready, get set, get my arrow. You know, I want to see it all coming. And when he comes in, I want to shoot. Well, these elk aren't that stupid. They get hammered. So you got to have the tight setup and trust and have confidence in your sequence that he will show up. And so what I do is I get in there and usually I just try to plant the seed, and I can either rake or I can give a cow call first. It really doesn't matter. But there's times I've raked and all of a sudden that bull just bugles me. So you never know. Most of the time, quiet, doesn't say anything. So we're gonna go from this bull won't say a sound because he's the hardest one to know if he's coming or not. So here's what I do. I usually will go in there, and the very first thing I like doing is cow calling. And what I do, here's the sound I use right here, and I don't do any more. And I know he's going to hear me. Just like that. That's it. I don't do any more. And I know he heard it. There's no doubt I got his attention. And he doesn't know who I am. But so what? Nothing's rutting. There's no hot cows around that he's aware of. He's not going to get all excited about nothing. But I planted a seed. There's a cow there. So now I just sit there and I wait a little bit. I don't do anything. I'll wait a minute and a half, and I may do it again. Just real soft. Nothing. Wait again. I've already planted a seed. He knows there's a cow over there. He might have 5 of them with him, whatever we knew was over there. And now all of a sudden, after a minute or two goes by, I start raking. And I rake. And I rake. I start pawing the ground. Just pawing. I'm planting a seed in his mind's eye of what's going on over there. All right, there's a cow right there that came from the sounds. And now I got a bull over here that you're raking, stomping the ground a little bit. And then all of a sudden you can throw out like maybe just one little whiny sound. Just that's it. No more. Don't do anything. And like she's being annoyed. And now all of a sudden I'm going to go through what a bull starts doing when there's a hot cow around. He starts panting. And a bull will start panting. He'll even add some glunks. And so what he's doing is he's displaying for this cow through the raking. And you'll hear him make little sounds like this. He's not bugling. And you can hear his heavy breathing. And you make just little squeaks. And he starts raking again and raking and raking. He's pawing again. And all of a sudden, I'll just pop with my lips a little bit. Kind of. That's all. You make all those little sounds. I'm clicking my tongue, popping my lips together like I'm spitting a hair off them. And to see it simulating a glunk. This is what a bull likes to do. When he's trying to taste the air because she's starting to drip and leak and he's tasting it in his mouth and it's exciting him. And he starts panting again and he's raking and panting. And then sometimes I'll just run back and forth 4 or 5 yards, crash, 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 bang, bang. Like I'm corralling, I'm fooling with this cow. But I'm containing her right there. When you start doing that, watch out because he's starting to come. The bull's getting up. And now you've piqued his interest that there's a hot cow right there. What does he want to do? He wants to smell that cow. And so I'm going through a slow play breeding sequence. If at any time, and in most cases, I get him to bugle. I generally will get him to bugle. I would say 75% of the time, all of a sudden the bull gets and he bugles me. When he bugles me, he's dead. I know I got him. He's done. It's the one that sneaks in that, God, is he coming? Is he coming? And most of the times they do come, but they don't say anything. But the minute he finally gets worked up, and usually it's the cow call when I'm going through this whole thing and I give that little annoying call again. And maybe I'm 10, 12 minutes into this. This doesn't happen in seconds. That's why it's called a slow play. And the minute and I'm waiting this whole time, I'm going, okay, as soon as I hear this, now I'm going to call him to me. I'm going to get real urgent and I'm going to make this call, call this bull, making him think he has a chance. Because when he bugles, remember, it's the cow that chooses the bull she wants to be with. She doesn't have to be with me. I'm just the one there that came in and heard her making these sounds and came in to check her out and go, oh, wow, she's hot. She's coming into estrus. So now when this bull tries to call her away, which that's generally what happens, I immediately respond with the contact buzz, which is telling that bull to come on over. Now I'm inviting him. I'm insistent on him coming over. And so he's going to hit me with a bugle that sounds like this. He's going to make that just that little. It's nothing big. He's just going to hit me with that, and that is the roundup bugle for showing emotion behind. This isn't the long 3-note, 3.5 second location bugle. He's just going to say he hears me, and he's trying to call me to him. Well, the bull she's with isn't going to like that, but immediately I'm going to try to call the bull my way, and I'm going to do this with the cow sound. And that's what she'll do. She'll do 4 or 5 of those. And when I do that, good luck, because that bull's going to scream right over the top. But he's going to get very insistent with his roundup, and I'm waiting for him to do that. And as soon as he does, I go like this. I let him know, no way, you stay back. And that's what you do. You build this whole momentum thing up. The only thing I got left back to do now to climb that ladder, now he's screaming right over me. We're going boom, 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 boom. And I'm still raking and I'm even pant for my cow because I'm just getting really excited over the situation. Anytime a bull pants, Whether he's panting a cow or another bull or the situation, it denotes excitement. He's building excitement. It's building it, and that's when you hear him pant. They pant for no other reason. So as I continue with these pants, I may go ahead and give a couple pants and give that challenge bugle right over the top of it. But the minute he comes in, he's going to start hearing the lip ball. And as he comes, I cut him off. And if it even gets to that, he's on his way. That's it. It's a done deal. You took a bull that was dead to the world and you amped him up his temperature. Now I'm 25 to 30 minutes from where I first started that. And so I know this from using it for years that it's going to take me this long. And that's why I call it a slow play, because it's nothing that's going to take 5 minutes. If I would have walked in there and known that bull was sitting right there with those cows and I started to give some bugles or cow calls and there's some challenge bugles out of nowhere, what do you think would have happened?
Price.
Nothing.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have done anything. It just wouldn't have sparked him. It wouldn't have done nothing. I had to slowly raise his temperature, because where is his temperature? It's sitting on C, like your car when you get up on a cold winter morning, sitting right there. I don't care how fast you turn the heat up, what you do, you're going to get no heat. It takes time for it to warm up. That's what I do with that bull. I take that needle and I move it from the C to a quarter of the way up and a little more and a little more until I got his bugle. And now I'm starting to cut him off. I'm getting the cow excited for her to call him in. And now I'm cutting him off. You stay back or else don't you dare come over. You see, I mean, that's what you're doing. and all in communication, I'm using the right sounds that he expects to hear. And I know what I'm going to hear back. I know he's not going to locate bugle me. I know he's not going to nervous grunt me. He's not going to do any of that. He is going to come full bore now, and he is actually going to escalate his momentum and calling, the same with mine. And as soon as we cut off each other enough, it's done. Here he comes. And he's a dead bull. He should be a dead bull. Those are some of the techniques we use, and you can even use that if a guy was good enough and wanted to as a cold calling sequence. If you think you're somewhere and you're a good fresh sign and you're only after bulls now, because that's going to pull the bulls in way faster than cows. If I got into that sequence and I started doing dominant cow sounds with a little raking but a lot of cow sounds, I'm going to pull the cows and spikes in first, because I used to do it, and that's what comes in. And I don't want them. I just don't want them. So I need to keep them back or they bust the whole thing up and it's over. So now I try to tailor all my calling, and that's not the only sequence I have, but I tailor it for pulling bulls in first. And I've noticed over the years, dominant bull sounds pulls bulls in. Your odds are much better to pull in the branch antlered bulls. And so, that's how I would handle that quiet time. I've also used that one right there where I'm walking up in the woods and I'm a mile back or whatever, and I hear a bull bugle. And he bugles a quarter mile away, maybe more. And so I sit there, okay, wait, I'm just listening. Nothing answers, nothing. 3 or 4 minutes go by, nothing. I thought, well, he bugled, I'll bugle, see what he does. So I bugle, nothing. Not a thing. So I sit there and wait 5 minutes just to make sure. Nothing. Bugle again. Maybe even throw some cow calls in between. Nothing. Dead to the world. Okay. That's a dead bull. He's done. I'm going to kill that bull. Oh, yeah. But I've got to feel out. I want to make sure there's nothing else going on up there. Okay, now I got him. I know where he is. I only have to get within a couple hundred yards of him. That's it. I go through that same sequence right there. See, there's nothing bothering him. I know this bull's sitting up there by himself. He isn't doing anything. And is he around other elk? You better believe it. They're herd animals. They're not by themselves. There's other cows around there, probably a bull. Who knows what he is? He only gave one bugle from a distance. I can't tell. So now I'm going to get in there, and I know this is going to take me half an hour. I already know it, but I'm going to play that game. And if he never makes a sound, he's usually going to come to that doorstep. And I really do believe the odds are around 75, 80%. That's how often they show up. But after 45 minutes to an hour, I get bored, and if they don't show up, I will leave. But it's very, very unusual because I already know he's there. And so I pique his interest. And I'll tell you the interesting thing about setups like this and the realistic calling, because when you start making sounds like this, Sam, kind of and you start raking. I mean, they sound so real. They're so real that there's moaning and yawning and groaning for your excitement. And then you start panting a little bit and you're raking and you give a couple cow calls. And this bull, he's only 150, 175 yards away. He's got no VCR, no TV, no iPhone. He's got nothing. And so they sit there waiting for this. It's September. They are waiting for cows to come into heat to spark them. So you slowly raise their temperature of excitement. Their testosterone levels already there. They have the urge to breed. There's just nothing to breed. So now I'm trying to create that spark into a flame, and I'm trying to raise that flame and turn up the heat. And as I do it with these sounds, and I'm, painting this picture in his mind's eye of what's going on like I did for the other bull, I do this every year. I mean, we call bull after bull after bull after bull in with this simple little sequence. When hunters start realizing it's the bull that tells other elk, I have a hot cow here, they will start putting two and two together and realize this is how you call bulls in. When you're imitating a hot cow, the cow makes no sound. I don't care how whiny I got with that thing. It doesn't say anything that I'm hot, that I'm ready to be bred. Nothing. It's the bull sounds that do it. And next time you get around these bulls and they're bugling and there's multiple, listen to them. You will hear them, and you'll hear the cows chip and chatter too because they talk. But it's the bull sounds that is cementing what's going on over there. So remember those sounds and which ones you want to use so you keep the communication, reasonable and something they expect to hear. But when you start getting in those little situations, a bull who's advertised himself and it's better to cow call right to him, because that's what he's asking, or you got a quiet herd bull, use the slow play, or you have a bull bugle on his own. There are just so many little things, or I don't care what I shoot, I'll use a cold calling sequence or a creative calling sequence. If I have 4 bulls, what if it was early season? Early season, 3 or 4 bulls bachelored up everywhere. I'm in the higher country, and I know that's what's there. And I see them. I can catch them in the cover. What's my best way to call those bulls in? Am I going to go through the breeding sequence right there? I could, but the odds aren't that good. How come they're not that good? Because it's early. They know dang well nothing's been in for weeks, months, nothing. Why is it those herd bulls or those satellites or whatever size bull, and they could all be 6 points. It doesn't matter. Is because they're still displaying for one another. They're still in their bachelor group. So my best bet when I know they're still bachelored up is to be a bull. I need to plant the seed in their mind that there's a new kid in the block. All I need, again, I try to get within 200 or 300 yards of him. That's it. You don't have to be close. And now I'm going to go through the motions that a real bull will use. There's no cow sounds involved, none. All he does is represent himself as a new kid in the block, and he's alerting all the cows out there as well as other bulls. Well, because these bulls need to know where the pecking order is, who's who, because they know darn well when the cows come in heat, that 3 or 4 or 5 bulls can breed that one cow. What if 3 cows come in at the same time? There's no way in the world her bull can breed those cows. Can't do it. And so they get branched out, and these cows are looking for these next bulls who are the next in line dominant structures. So these bulls need to know where they're at in the pecking order. Are they going to be one of those 3 herd bulls or 4? There's only 7 bulls in the area, or 12. 5 of them are going to get lucky. Who am I? Where am I? Where do I fall in there? And so this is what happens. And so when a new bull comes in and these guys are still bachelored up, they're like, who the hell's that? I need to know who this is. I need to know. We need to size him up. Where does he fit? Does he just bump us all down? Or is he below? They don't know. Believe it or not, this is how elk think. They need to know where they fit in that breeding process, in that rutting time frame. So when you go in and you start advertising yourself as a new bull, they have no idea who you are. And so you got to get very creative with your sounds. Your volume changes, the length. It's going to be a lot of location bugles mixed in with like roundup, but nothing really over that. You're not challenging. You're not lip ball. You don't need to do any. You don't need to grunt and chuckle if you don't want. If you sound pretty good with chuckles, then just give some of those low ones, like you're yearning. And this is what bulls do. They start feeling the urges to breed inside. They'll go in there and they'll start advertising themselves in new areas. And it's not something you hear all the time, but I've been out in the woods for so many years. I've heard bulls just sit there and go over. And I mean, I can hear them just making the weirdest sound all from one spot, And when you do that, you will be shocked how many elk come in. And they don't say anything. They never bugle away. I think my son that I've called in probably 6 different bulls and for others and myself that he's killed that I've used, and they've never made a peep. Not one yet has. They just come sneaking in. And I mean, most of those shots are at 20 yards. I mean, they come right on top of you. They just come plop, 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 plop. They're not looking for a fight. They're not looking for anything. It's like they just come in as a hero. He's over here somewhere. And they're like that. They're very lazy and lackadaisical. It's not a big deal, but here they come showing up. So you see, I have different things. It doesn't mean I can't use one thing for all, but my odds are much lower. And so when I get into a situation, I try to evaluate it real quick from past experiences and from our success rates. And I just like, okay, I know that this is my best tactic for this guy. I'm not going to run out there. Like guys on the internet will tell you, I challenge every bull I come across. We're wonderful. How's that been working for you? In most cases, you don't get many chances. And if a guy has an 8-day hunt and he has 3 days that are quiet, he doesn't hear anything, and maybe he hears one bull a day in the next 4 days, what are his odds of calling one of those in by using that technique of challenging everything? You see, because most people are calling 1 or 2 out of 10 if they're lucky, and they're not killing them. They're finally getting them in, but you never know what kind of obstruction or the angles they're presenting or what the wind, like I said before. All these little things can happen. There's no guarantee because an animal's standing at 25 yards, you're going to kill him. There's no way. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and so they leave. And so, you look for those little things. And so I like trying to tailor my calling that is going to give me an opportunity at every single bull, not just throw a couple of sounds out there and hope he's the one that's going to cooperate. I try to put the elk on the defense. And I've noticed this over the years, that if the bulls put me on the defense and they call the shots, I lose almost every one of those battles. But when I turn the tables and I force them to answer to me, to respond to me, to act physically, appearance-wise, like the calling setups I do, I make the elk move. I make them come to me. You see, I find my odds go through the roof that they're in trouble because I catch them moving and I'm not moving. I'm still. They're in search mode. The only times I like being the aggressor, like I said before, is when I have to call right to them and run at them, because this isn't a slow play. This isn't a setup situation. This is like everything's taking place in 30 seconds. I either get it done or I don't. And so you see, it's because my hand is forced because of the action, and that they're calling me to them, and I think this is my best move. I get a nervous grunt. All right, I'm calling my way real quick because I found out already I've killed several. This works. And if I bark back and forth with them, give them that nervous grunt, I find I lose them all. They're interested, and we go back and forth for 10 minutes, but then they leave. They wander off. I never do see them. So, all those things, okay, that was fun, but I still got my tag in my pocket, so it didn't do me any good. No, really. And at time and time again, you find you walk away with that tag in your pocket. So you're going, okay, what can I do next? Here's how I got to change things. And that's where I start saying I play the odds. So I have something for every bull I hear. And whether it works or not, I know that my chances are good. That if I hear him, and this is what he's doing, okay, here's how I'm going to attack it. And it's the things that you and I just discussed here. And that is how I evaluate, form a plan. But for a new hunter, that's kind of a lot on his plate. So that's why, unless a guy's really a quick learner, that's why I really highly recommend a cold calling and a creative calling sequence. If somebody is in an area and they go, hey, I really want to try that slow play, I'm convincing other elk out there that breeding is going on and it forces them in. If that's simple enough to learn, that you can actually add that to your repertoire without being somebody that's hunted for 5 or 10 years. It doesn't take that much. And once you start seeing the results of elk coming to you, it kills you, because it's like, I'm going to use this all the time. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, this is a yearly thing. This is not once a year I use this. No. I mean, I'm using it constantly, and it works on anything, on just about every bull. I called 2 in for my son last year. We called 3 bulls in. One of them he couldn't get the shot on, and the next 2 he killed. That was it. I was done with him. And so he killed the first one with a longbow, and then the second one he killed was with a compound. And that slow play sequence on that bull with the compound was a 345-inch bull, and the other one was a 5x6 with a longbow, and he shot that one at 28 yards. The other one was under 20 yards, actually. And I actually was trying to push that bull away. That big bull, I thought he was a small bull by his sound. It was early in September, and he just sounded really wimpy. And usually I'm pretty good about sizing them up from their sound, and I really struck out on this one. So as far as I thought he was a 5-point, and I kept pushing him away. I bugled my way right to him, trying to clear him out of my way so we could keep hunting and look for bigger bulls. And we ended up hitting an opening, Sam. We hit an opening. It was like 300 yards across it. And I heard the bull bugle on the other side of it in the timber. And so I decided, well, let let me see if I can call this bull over. I mean, there's a huge opening. Let's see what he looks like. At least see him through our binos. So I step back in the timber, and my son stays on the edge. And so I decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to call him over. So I give 3 rapid, really fast cow calls. It was something of that nature. And immediately he answered. Well, he'd been answering every dang bugle as it was. And so he immediately answered, and I figured that would stop him. So as soon as he answered, I kind of just gave a little bit of a bugle behind him, letting him know I was with her. And he pops right out into the edge. Or, I mean, he walked out of the timber. He couldn't have been 30 yards in it. And he walks out to the edge, and I'm behind my son, I don't know, 20 yards or so. And he's standing right at the edge of the timber, but the bull can't see him. And my son turned around and looked at me, and he goes, Dad, that's a big bull. Kind of mouths it to me. And I'm like, what? No way. I mean, it sounded like nothing. And he goes, no, that's a big bull. And I'm like, we had already talked. I said, this was a Wyoming hunt. And he killed one in Idaho on over the counter. So now we're in Wyoming just a couple days later, 2 days later. And he says, no. I said, we're going to shoot a 300 or nothing here. I said, let's make sure, that's our target. He goes, no, that's a good one. So I'm, well, let me call him over now. So now I go into my slow play is what I did. And I played with him a little bit more with some of the cow sounds and then some of the bugles, just trying to keep it entertained, and then slowly went into the pants, the little bit of glunking, the raking, letting him know, stay back. I've got a hot cow here. And that was all it took. Here he comes, starting to trot across that opening. It was a burn opening. But it took me time. It took me 20, 25 minutes to bring him in. I mean, he was there the whole time. And Paul said he kept going to a tree and raking, going to another tree and raking, going to another tree, and he'd bugle and scream. I tried to bring him in with a contact bus from the cow, and he would just tear it up. I challenged over him. We just went back and forth, and he kept slowly coming. And I could see my son. He didn't even have an arrow on his bow yet. I'm just watching my son's body language. My son's killed 28 bulls with a bow, wow. And I called every one of them in. So I see my son. I know how he acts. I know what he does, And so but for the listeners to go, why isn't he doing it? Because I know how my son is. Well, he's 39. And so in all these times, I see how he reacts to as the bull gets closer or he's still too far. So all of a sudden, I'm back there about 30 yards behind my son. I'm not very far. And I see him slowly reaching for an arrow. I'm going, oh, this guy's getting closer. So, it excites me as the caller too. It kind of keeps me amped and keeps me in the right mindset. And so I just start giving some of those soft moans like I was giving real soft as I'm talking to this cow. Not him. And I'm just really amping it up to the point that this bull he knows I've got a cow. She is ready to breed right now. I mean, this is the picture I'm painting him. And so little by little, next thing you know, I can hear the bull just screaming. And I mean, it's like, this bull is right there. He's got to be at the timber's edge, and Paul's not drawn back. There's no way that bull's 35 yards from me. And he just must be standing there. I don't know what he's doing. And so, I'm trying to move back a little bit and I'm thinking, well, maybe he's to the right. I got to go to my left a little bit more and try to pull the bull over because what it sounds like he's right there, maybe he's not. And so, you second guess yourself and you try to make it right to pull it by your shooter. And so all of a sudden I'm looking as I'm still calling and raking and I see him drawn back, And I'm like, and the bull just screams. And I'm like, there is no way this bull's not standing on top of him. I mean, it's like, I see my son full draw, and then it sounds like the bull is in his lap. I mean, he's that close, and I see nothing. Zero.
Jeez.
And all of a sudden, I see him kind of slowly moving to the right. Paul's starting to swing. Is real slow, so the bull doesn't see him, just slowly moving. I'm going, oh, the bull's to his right, and I didn't know that. So I start sliding behind Paul a little bit, and I give him a nervous grunt. Is what I did. I hit him with a nervous grunt and a hard scream. And when I did, all I could hear was running right at me. I mean, that was it. The bull had enough. And he kind of stopped right by Paul, and Paul shot him. I believe it was 17 yards, but the bull would not turn. He was coming right toward Paul. And so Paul had to shoot him as a frontal and just buried the arrow. Well, I heard the shot. I heard the bull running I still haven't seen this thing. I didn't know what he is. And so I'm looking at my son. I don't want to make too much of a move, but I'm calling. I'm bugling, trying to slow the bull down, so the tracking is less, And so I can see Paul, and he's rubbernecking it through the trees, trying to see the bull, where he's going. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I see him turn around, and he looks at me, and he kind of just gives a little fist pump, not much, just a little bit. It wasn't his first one or anything. And so I looked, so now I knew that was okay to go over. So now I go over and, what is it? He goes, well, I think he's a little over 300. I mean, he's a really nice bull. I said, really? And so, it was exciting. So as I'm sitting here talking to him, I heard the bull give a death moan. And we both did. He'd go, it was over. That was it. That's all we heard. And we couldn't see him, but that's all we heard. So anyway, we go over there and we tracked the bull down, and I was like, holy cow, that's way over 300 inches. And so that was, it was nice. Yeah. In 3 days, 2 or 3 days, he had shot, but both those bulls were down. So that was pretty fun. But to go through that slow play, to run a bull off like that, and I mean, there was hunters everywhere. They were all over the place. And to run this bull off and then decide I'm now going to call him back by switching my sounds up now and pulling him over, that's kind of a good thing. It really is. And because one minute you're like, get the crap out of my way. And the next minute, wait a minute. And was able to pull him back around. And, you think that was something. On the other one he killed with the longbow, I called this bull in through a slow play. Same thing. One bugle. That's all we heard. And we moved our way up the mountain, got up in there. I called this bull. I'm not even going to go through the whole thing, but I called him in. It takes me another 20, 25 minutes to bring this bull in. Paul shoots him at about 28 yards. He catches a willow limb and hits him through the top of the leg, goes through his brisket and into the other leg. Bull takes off. After 25-minute call in, and this thing, I was reaching for everything to pull this bull. I had him ignited. I finally got him to spark off right at the very end, but before that, he would not do anything. But I got him there, hits the branch, tells me, I walk up there, he's shaking his head. He goes, I just wounded that bull. I'm like, no. And he goes, yeah, I caught the limb. I saw the fletchings. He was using feathers because he was shooting a longbow. And he says, I saw it catch a limb and hit him low. And I was like, oh. So we waited there and waited for a little bit, went and found the arrow, what was left of it, and it was like half of it was gone. So we slowly kind of and there's blood all over the ground. And like, okay, we're going to follow, let's at least follow him and see what it is. We want to make sure that he's okay, or is he laying there dead? Maybe he's mortally wounded and we don't even know it. And we're doing this, 40 minutes goes by. And we're slow, it's thick, really thick sand. And 40 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden, he bugles from the same exact spot he bugled originally. He's straight up the mountain up on a bench. And when I heard him, I told Boss, that's the same bull. That is the same bull. And he's like, no way. I go, yeah, that's him. And so we decide, okay, I'm going to recall this bull in. Well, now Paul hears a few cow calls and realizes it's a bull. He had cows up there. I couldn't hear the cow calls. He did. And so we come up with a game plan. And one thing leads to another. As far as our game plan, I'm going to get real aggressive with him out of the gate because I already got him pretty worked up on the way down. So I already knew I did it 40-something minutes ago. So I proceed to call, and within probably, I would say 5 to 7 minutes, I called that bull right back into 28 yards. And Paul this time kills the bull. That's how come we know what the first arrow did. So I recall this bull back in with an arrow in him. And it's stuck in his far leg right into the joint. And when I brought that bull back in, I watched him. The bull was 35 yards from me when Paul killed him. I watched that bull. He didn't even have a limp. Nothing. He was walking and moving and screaming at me because I worked this guy up. And then I was just challenging him big time. And he just came running down the mountain. He ran down that mountain from that top peak where he was, which was 150 yards away. When I finally hit him with that last challenge, he was coming to tear my head off. That's just all there was to it. I could have shot that bull. At 35 yards, I was looking at him through the tree branches, which I didn't even have a bow. I didn't want to shoot, and I wanted just my son to. And so, but the fact is to bring that wounded bull back in for a second shot on over-the-counter public land, Idaho, that was really one of the pinnacles in my life. And my son and I have called over 1,000 bulls to bow range in all our years of hunting. And so we've called a lot. That is the first time that's ever happened.
Wow.
I've never called a bull back in that was shot. Usually they run out of the country, Sam. They do not stick around. And for some reason, he ran back to his cows and they stayed there. I don't know if because he felt like he was hurt, but he really wasn't. When he came in thundering like there was nothing wrong. But anyway, I just thought that was a good story for some of the people.
No, that's absolutely incredible. And it shows... It shows putting into practice what we were talking about earlier, and how situations can change and you have to be adaptable to that. And I mean, I think it really just comes down to summarizing it is you have to be aware of what the narrative is currently.
You really do. You're so spot on. Once you understand that language and you only use those sounds just like the elk do, you're right on the money.
Yeah, figure out what the narrative is, what the situation is, and you then have all of these tools to decide how can I rewrite this narrative so the bull or the cow or the satellites, whatever it is, do what I need them to do. And it's It's not an easy thing, I imagine, by any stretch, but once you become good at something like that, I can from your experience, as far as I can tell, it can only improve your elk hunting game as a whole.
Yeah, and the important thing is, it's that practice is so important. It's one thing to say, I need to make this sound, I need to make this sound, now I got to bring this one in, and doing it. It comes through practice. So when I know I need a sound, I'm not tripping through 3 sounds trying to get that one. I mean, I'm one of those guys that it seems like as the clutch gets worse and the pressure is on, that's where I'm at my best. And it comes from practice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to sit here and brag or anything. It's not like that. But some people under pressure just don't perform as well as others. But I've always been one that when it comes right down to brass tacks, I just can reach down and grab that exact sound and with the emotion behind it. And it only comes through repetition. So for guys to get out there and get in a situation, if you shy away from the sound that you know is needed, it's because you haven't put your practice in. You know the one you need, but it's like, if I do it, I know I'm going to mess up and he's going to blow out of there. Well, what is the alternative? Nothing? Cow call when you know it doesn't even make any sense right there. And, this is what people do. And you know what? Sometimes people are their own worst enemies. And you know what? They spent all these thousands of dollars to get on this elk hunt. And all they do is kick themselves in the butt all the way back to camp because they knew what they should have done. And I hear this every single year. I give a lot of seminars. I've given 6 this year already. And so I talk to a lot of people and I hear that inner complaint from them. They disgust themselves at times because they knew what they needed to do, but because they didn't put the time in, didn't think it was as important, but it is. Calling is so, so important. And once you understand the value of it because of its use, you are going to realize that your bugle and your cow call are indispensable tools. There's no way in God's green earth you'll ever leave them behind. Because I ask people ask me all the time, should I even bring a bugle? I heard that the pressure's so great, all the bugle do is run them off, blah, 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 blah. And it's true if you don't know what you're doing. Should I leave my driver in my bag? Every time I hit it, I goes 25 yards and to my left. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. Yeah, leave it in your bag because you suck at it and you're not willing to fix it. Until you go on the range and fix that problem and gain confidence that you can send it down the fairway, leave it in the bag because you don't want to do your practicing on the range because you're going to suck. The same as your calling. If you think you're going to run out there because you know how to make a few cow calls and do the other sounds when you need them the most and it's under pressure, you won't perform. Have you ever been to a 3D shoot and these guys are just lasers at 20 and 25 yards and then they get to the steel target? It's the size of a hard ball, and it's 20 yards away. And they only have to put it through this 3-inch opening and look at the ground. And there must be hundreds of arrows that are destroyed because the pressure. And if it was foam, they would probably hit the bullseye every time at 20 yards. But the pressure makes you flinch, makes you want to see where the arrow's going. I mean, that's what I mean with calling. Yeah, you're sitting at home and you sound beautiful and wonderful, but you get out there under pressure. There's the hair on the animal. It's right over here, and I have to make just this sound or a sequence, and I don't really want to screw it up because we've already gotten to this point. He was over here at 400, now he's right there, and I need to do this sound. And that's what I mean. So it comes through practice. So guys, don't shy away from the practice, man. Overdo it. There's no such thing as overdoing it, but that's how you get comfortable, when you can pop that reed in your mouth and do anything with it. And you'll notice it will pay huge dividends in the elk woods.
Well, and it's a good idea talking about that practice to, just like we do with archery. You start out, you get your mechanics, your basics down in a nice, calm situation, standing in front of the target, releasing those arrows. But then as you progress in your shooting, you start to do things that'll like raise your heart rate or add that extra pressure like you would on the hunt. Why don't we do that with our calling? Once you get those basics down and those sounds down, why not when you're going for a run in the morning, grab your reed, take them with you, grab your bugle tube, take it with you. And once your heart rate's up and your mouth's a little dry and you're panting a little bit, then try and make those cow sounds and see what happens, or try and do those different sequences and see what happens.
Yep. I agree. I mean, I actually never even thought about that, but that's a very good point. And after a while, it's just like shooting your bow. It'll be old hat. You'll be used to it. And so when the situation does arise, the pressure happens. Yeah, you won't shrink back. You know that you've done everything you needed to do for that moment, and that may be your only moment. It happens every year. You just don't walk in the out. How many times have you elk hunted? You do not go out there and get into 3 bulls a day on over-the-counter hunt. It just doesn't happen.
I've still yet to see a bull, so I'm
there you go.
Just excited for that.
So you want to be the guy that can take advantage of that animal when the time happens. I mean, it's like, okay, I am prepared. And it is only through that repetition, whether you're going to do it the way you just mentioned, or just through calling in general, or shooting your bow, and you got your focus and your form down, you're confident in all aspects, and so it's the same as in your gear that you're using and your training ahead of time, knowing I'm 63. I don't even hesitate to hunt 20 straight days in a row with no break, and I will cover 5 to 10 miles every day. I'm not a tree stand hunter. And I mean, I live in Idaho. And if people know what Idaho looks like, it's a lot of rough country. And that's what I choose to hunt. I try to get away from as many hunters as we can. And so we hunt very, very rugged country. But even at my age, I can still keep up, pursue, and still pack 5 bulls out in that same 20 days, our own and help others. And again, it all comes through training, whether I'm training with my calling, training with my workout routine, and I have a real strict one. I use it year round, and I know it's what's necessary for me to continue to hit those elk woods and to perform at a level that I expect myself to be able to handle. And so it doesn't matter what the facet of hunting that you do. Be prepared in every aspect, especially as a newer hunter. Don't take things for granted, thinking that I can get by if I just do this or this or this. I would rather see a guy well prepared in his calling and in his physical conditioning and have $100 pack and $100 bow. I'm serious. And everything on him is cheap and low budget as he could go just so he could hunt. Because those other items, they're not going to help you kill elk. They may make you a little more comfortable, but you know what? My son and I used to use a Badlands 2200. We killed over two dozen bulls and packed them out in that pack. And it's not the most comfortable pack around. It isn't. It's like, it gets it done. Don't get me wrong. It will hold 100-pound loads, but it's not comfortable. But who cares? I'm elk hunting. I'm not building pianos here, and I'm supposed to have air-conditioned room. I'm elk hunting. Until you've been through some of those school of hard knocks. One of the hardest elk hunts we ever did, we were kind of going out for a day hunt, so I had this little cheapy day pack. Paul was probably 14 years old. He's 39. He'll be 40 in August. That's how many years ago it was. We ended up killing a 6x7 point bull 7 miles back. We had a pack that was worth carrying your lunch in and some water. That was it. Well, there was 4 of us that were back there. Nobody had anything. Were we prepared? Did we even expect that we were going to kill a bull like that? No, we weren't. And we were checking out a new area, but we did. And none of us wanted to go back. We carried that entire elk out, all 4 of us, with no packs. We had, I was one of the guys with a hindquarter. I carried that hindquarter on my right shoulder, on my left shoulder, on both, on behind my neck, in forklift style. Everything you can imagine for 7 miles of country. This is no roads or trails. Oof. And by the time I got back, I was the most beat up all of us were, bruised, beat up beyond your imagination. From that day on, that 2200 pack was like having the absolute best thing in the world. It was. I could put it into something and not have it. Have you ever carried a hindquarter for 7 miles? Let me tell you what. It bites into every bone and every muscle on your neck, on your shoulders, everywhere, on your arms. It gets to be there is no comfortable spot. And I always told myself, this happened a lot of years ago, just under 30 years. If every hunter did that one time in their life, they would have such an appreciation for anything they own, their shoes, their packs, their bow. It doesn't have to be the best in the world. It doesn't. Not even close. And you can still get out there and have a great time on a shoestring budget. Just don't cut back on your calling practice, and your physical conditioning. But you don't need $1,000 pack and $1,000 bow and $1,000 optic and a $500 pair of shoes to hunt and kill elk. You don't. All the years we hunted, I bet you I wasn't worth $150 walking in the That's the truth. And I mean, from my pack to everything I owned, it was nothing. It was bare bones. I didn't have money. Now, today, I can afford anything I want. And I do have nice stuff because it's there, and it's just my wife and I. I don't have kids to support or anything like that. And I do have nicer things. But don't think, I hate to see newer hunters go out there thinking that they have to be a $10,000 bill walking through the woods. You don't. No way. Get something affordable so you don't, withhold things back from the family, as needs come up. And then upgrade as you see the need and you have the budget to do it. But all you need is a $200 pair of optics. But people think they got to have Swarovskis. They don't. You really don't. You're going to go hunt elk for 7 days and you need Swaros? What are they going to do the other 360 days? Sit in the closet? But that's what I mean. But most people that go out there are only hunting a month, a few. Get something that's reasonable that you can still see with. Get a pack for a couple $100. Get something used. I mean, really, until you can upgrade and it's affordable and your family doesn't suffer from it. Because I'll tell you what. And I kid you not, Sam, it's nothing to spend 10 grand on hunting gear when you take in consideration your phone, your GPS, your arrows, your broadheads, your pack, the binos. I mean, you put all those together in your bow itself. I mean, your GPS. I mean, think of everything that you got. It's a lot of money. We're walking through the woods as a $10,000 bill. Mm-hmm. And a lot of, hunters aren't hunting because they think if they don't have those things, they can't be successful. Baloney. I never had anything like that until just even a few years ago. I mean, companies would send me stuff, so that was great. But before that, heck no, we didn't even think about it, about having all those kinds of stuff. So I hate for people not to go elk hunting thinking that they have to be equipped to a certain level. Well, heck, even a TP tent now is over $1,000, just something lightweight. So you guys get out there and experience it. Have the fun. Learn to call. Be in shape. And, man, you guys can just run the woods. I mean, you'll have a great time. And if you do, I would recommend highly to be mobile. Do your first hunts, your first years from a base camp. Be mobile. Be able to run out 5, 6, 7 miles and check country out. If you find this honey hole and there's elk everywhere and now you want to bivvy hunt it for 2 or 3 days, do it. But don't jump all into one thing thinking you got a backcountry elk hunt. Do you know the 5 of us? We've pulled 194 bulls on over-the-counter tags. That's how many we've taken in 27 years. We've been together that long. And I want to tell you folks something. We've never bivvy hunted one day. None. Not one. All those elk. These are 5 and 6 point bulls, most all of them. And we've killed bulls from, a lot of them from 300 to 360 inches. And a lot of them are even less than that. They're 250s, 270s, But my point is that you don't need to bivvy hunt if you don't want to. If in time you want to get back further, but again, remember, I'm hunting 5 to 10 miles a day. I mean, it's not like I'm hunting a half mile from the truck or 1 mile. No, we get back there and we get into areas most people don't go to at all because we do not use access points. We don't use the dirt roads. We don't use the trails for access. We go to areas and look at the country and see the most rugged stuff around that has no access, and that's where we like to do our hunts. So that's what we're doing, and it's easy to get away from people in a mile. We're killing most of our elk in less than 2 miles. So no matter what state you go to, you can have a lot of good, great elk hunting less than 2 miles away, GPS miles especially, and don't use the normal access point where everybody's parked and camped. And you will find that a lot of these elk these people are hunting are pushing them into these more solitude areas. And so that's what we try to hunt and find. So you guys can do that, but stay mobile. So you can hunt this area, this area, this area, this area. You're going to find them. And we don't even have time to find out how I hit the bedding areas and feeding areas the fastest way. I mean, it just takes more time.
Yeah.
But get the app. It's all in there. The app has all of this stuff, Sam. I find these areas and their information we've even talked about here.
And that's the perfect transition because I wanted to, we've mentioned it through the podcast, but tell me about the app. Tell me all about the ElkNut app here.
Okay, just, shortly, just so people can say, okay, here's what I would expect. First of all, the app does cost money. It's not very expensive, but it costs $9.95, and you own it for life. All the updates that come are free. Right now, there's probably 26 videos on it. And the video clips, what I've done with those in the very beginning, as I mentioned already, is how to use a mouth read, how to select a mouth read, And that's what the 6 or 7 minutes of it's worth. And then you're going to see elk sounds on the menu. And that means you got all the bull sounds in one category, all the cow sounds in their separate category. Now, each one of those sounds, you're going to hear a real elk making that sound. You're going to hit separated calf, separated cow, contact buzz, nervous grunt, regathering, social, and you're going to have an audio button, and each one you're going to hit it and it's going to give you the sound a real elk is making that sound. Then you're going to see it say ElkNut, and it's going to say it on every sound, and I make that sound. So you can hear a hunter make it, and I'm just Joe Hunter like you. Yeah, I've practiced for a long time, but I'm still Joe Hunter. I'm not a world championship caller. And so you're going to hear me make it, and you're going to hear a real elk make it, and then right underneath it, it's going to say record. Now you can record your own sound. You're going to say, okay, I want to hear Paul make a challenge bugle. I want to hear a real bull make a challenge bugle. Now I'm going to do my own and see how I stack up. What do I need to practice on? And you're going to do that through every single sound has that feature of recording yourself and listening to it and compare all on the same page. So you're not running around trying to, sync a different page. And no, it's all right there. So it's a really one-stop feature for there. And then you're going to say, okay, there's the sound, but what does it mean? So now it says tips. Every sound has tips. You click it and it's going to say, what does this sound mean? So it tells you what the elk are saying or what you're saying if you use that sound. When do I use it? When do the elk use it? Okay, and it's going to have all those questions like that highlighted as a main point in bold writing, and then underneath it will be option after option after option of a challenge bugle, of a location bugle, of a roundup bugle, a lip ball bugle, a nervous grunt, all the cow sounds. And so there's tons of written content. And also on each one of those sounds, when you go to challenge bugle or any cow sound or bull sound, up will come a little video if you want to watch it. It will say video. And I will show you how to make that sound with a reed. Each individual sound, it's a 90-second clip that shows you how to make the contact buzz, how to make the roundup bugle with the mouth reed, my tongue location. So you're watching it. And so now you're seeing, oh, this is how he's doing it. Just like a lip ball. How does he make that lip ball? You purse your lips together and you go, and then when I put the reed in my mouth and I show you that visually, you're going to go, that's how he's, and once you see the visual and what the sound means and how to make it with the reed and a bugle, it's just so much quicker in the learning process. And then what does it mean? How do I use it in a hunting situation? If I hear it in the woods, what is the bull saying? How do I react? All of it sitting there on the app. And I show you full moon hunting times, what we use, some of the tactics, new beginner elk hunting tips. I'm going to show you videos on how to do the breeding sequence, how to do the cold calling sequence in the woods. I show you the exact sound, the setup, the woods, everything, and I go through the scenario. I show you how to do the advertising sequence. I go through them all, and you're going to see every bit of this on the app. You download it, you have it. When you go to the woods, there it is. You do not need Wi-Fi. It's already on your phone. All you need is battery power. So even if you're in the woods and you hear a bugle and you're like, what the heck? I have no idea what that is. I'm a newer hunter. I don't know. Go to the app. Hit the bugles. Hit this one, then this one, then this one. That's the sound I'm hearing right there. It says, this bull is saying blah, 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 blah. Here's what you do next. You see, and so after a period of time of repetition and you're using the app on any sounds you hear out there, it'll show glunking, grunts, chuckles, everything. I mean, it has it all. It will tell you what they're saying and how to handle it. So in time, you're going to be like us, and you're not going to have to pull the app out. You're going to go, I've been through this so many times, like that baseball hitter. I've seen this picture now 18 times. I know I don't have to pull out my sheet to see what he's going to do. I know I've been there enough times. I know how to handle this guy. And that's what you'll end up doing. But in the meantime, it's such a great learning tool. And if you're around the campfire, on the mountain, and in a situation, you can use it. At the campfire, you could even turn it on and hit the bugle or whatever sound you want and ask your buddies, okay, here's a sound right here. What's happening right here? And you know what most of them are going to say? I don't know. And so now you explain to them, and then you show them the responses and the answers. And so when you go out there and hunt, because what's going to happen is if you start educating yourself and you take 2 or 3 or 4 other hunters, who's going to do all the calling? You, because you're the best. And they're going to go, man, I don't sound nothing like you. I'm going to screw everything up. Or you do hear them call and you go, I don't want you calling for me. Forget it. I'll call for myself and I'll do the calling for you because you guys just have no clue. So everybody, they need to start practicing and have this app. And the next feature we have coming, Sam, so your listeners know, is all this is already on the app, is we're putting a feature on it that anybody that has the app, you are going to be able to record your sound and send it to anybody that has your app. They can listen to you. Your buddy's going to go, hey, you're doing good. Maybe one of your buddies lives in another state, but you get together in your elk hunts, and you can't be together all the time. So you send him any sound you want, and he sends you yours, and you guys are listening to each other. And you go, hey, wait a minute. If you're going to call for me, you need to make this part way better on the end. You're not sounding that good. And so you can critique each other. If there's 3 or 4, you're going to be able to reach out and send it to anybody that owns the app. In addition to that, you're going to be able to send that sound to anybody on Facebook or anybody on Instagram. So it's going to have the feature that you can connect and send it right to them and say, how do you think I'm sounding? So that's pretty cool. That's what we're working on right now to put on that app. So there is so much stuff on this thing. You guys got to have it. I mean, it's the best $10 you'll ever spend in your life. And there's no renewal fee each year. None.
I can definitely echo that sentiment because we were talking earlier, and on my way to my elk hunt, my 20-hour drive out to Idaho, I would say probably a good 60 to 75% of that drive was plugged in the ElkNut app or my iPhone into my stereo speaker, so I had all the sounds going, and then I'd try one, and I'm looking forward to checking out the bugle sharing or the call sharing feature.
It's just
that'll
how
be fun.
You get better.
And it was funny, you were talking about sitting there and you're out in the woods and then using the app to identify sounds. And I was just thinking, I'm going to start pulling up just random tourists or whatever, just these elk videos that you can find on YouTube.
YouTube is great for it.
Just pull up random elk videos and then use the app and sit there and try and figure out what the elk in that video are saying, and maybe sometimes it'll have it tell you the situation in the description, read that after the fact. But I think that,
you get enough to where you go, I cow call this and now a bull bugle. You already know he's calling you to him. Mm-hmm. Go straight to the roundup bugle because that's the sound a bull's using. He's using a roundup bugle. So go straight to it and go, I'll be dang. That is the same bugle. Yep. You see what I mean? Because, the hunter's cow calling or if a guy challenges a bull, listen to his emotion. That's what remember, you have location bugle is social. Okay. Now you have little frustrated, little upset. You're not coming when I'm asking you to come, and that's a roundup bugle, and he'll use it several times because you're not coming as he's asking you to. So then all of a sudden, he may go to a challenge, and a challenge is emotion. This is just a name us hunters have applied to it because it tells us what to look for that sound or that emotion. But the challenge is used for anything. It can be used toward a cow because a bull's getting very frustrated or upset. I've called her 5 times now. She won't come, so he gets... He's insistent. The lip ball's the ultimate. So when you start breaking those 4 sounds down, the elk fall right in there somewhere where their level of emotion is for the situation at hand. Remember that when you watch these YouTube videos or hunting videos, and when you start reading it, you can now say this emotion part is saying this or this. That's how you learn. And same with the cow sounds. Listen to the cow sounds in the herd, in the group, in the peripheral. If that's what's happening on the YouTube video or on an outdoor TV, you're going to start going, oh, this makes so much more sense. Before, to me, it was just a bunch of elk talking. Now I understand this one's talking to this one in response of, or this one to this one. It'll drive you nuts, though, because once you start hearing those elk, and what the hunter's move is, you're going to go, that guy's screwing up. That's total screw. That's not what he should be doing right now. This elk is saying this, and this guy is just cow calling away, and he thinks the elk should come, and he's not going to. Here's what you need to do right here, dude. You need to call the elk to you. That's what you'll end up doing. I've done it because I watch it to cement ideas in some of the teachings that I've learned myself from the elk. And it's just like, oh, they're messing so many things up. But it's fun because it's also educational to me and you and to anybody that'll take the time to do it. But that is such a good thing to do that you mentioned, Sam. People can really educate themselves right now at home by understanding what to look for and then go watch some of those hunting videos. Great idea.
Well, for those of us that just don't really have easy access to go out and scout or visit those elk or spend that much time out there, you kind of got to find ways to fill in those gaps.
Yeah, so, great way.
So if people wanted to follow you online and find the ElkNut app, where can people catch you?
Well, yeah, the ElkNut app can be found on our website. We have elknut.com. Or if you have an iPhone, you just go to your app store. And when you go to your app store, you're going to see search. It'll be one of your functions there, one of your features. Click search and type in ElkNut. There's only one ElkNut there. And when you do, the ElkNut app will come up, and it'll even have a free video there that will tell you all about the app. And I'm the one actually talking on it. And I explain what is in there, kind of what I already did here. And you'll see some of the stuff, and it'll even show you some of the pages that will flash by, showing you the cow sounds, bull sounds, the audios, the tips, and so forth. So you'll get a real good idea. But if you have an Android phone, you go to Google Play. That's your source. And also you would go to your search function and type in ElkNut, and that app will come up. You'll know it's the right one when it's $9.95, and you'll see my ugly mug there with that 6x7 bull sitting there. And that's an over-the-counter Idaho bull that I had taken. Actually, that bull right there that you will see is the longest shot I have ever made on any animal. And I've taken a total of 26 mule deer bucks with a bow, and I won't even tell you how many elk. It was a bunch. But on the elk, I shot that bull at 50 yards. He was a 50-yard shot. That's the furthest elk I've ever shot, or furthest animal I've ever shot with a bow. But I thought that was interesting on that particular one. And yeah, that was a great one. I was with my son that day, and we actually videoed that hunt. But anyway, yeah, see how I get going off on these tangents? But anyway, that's how you find the app.
I enjoy them. That's that's where all the gold comes from, is hearing those stories, and I love hearing them.
It's those memories, you kind of build those memories. And I will mention, a lot of times people say, I'd like to know a broader range. The app is good, and there's so much on it. But is there specialized sounds or sequences where you talk about this, and there's even more information? And there actually is, because when I do some of the CDs and DVDs, I can spend an hour on 2 or 3 subjects instead of an hour on 15 subjects. Mm-hmm. And so if people are interested in that, and they even want to further their knowledge, if you look on the elknut.com website and you get to the very first package, it's under packages, it will say works well in wolf country. That just means it works anywhere. But there's a 3-pack there of the playbook, the ElkNut 5, and volume 4. That 3-pack, it has 4 hours of just, and it's all instructional. That's all I really dive into. I try to show you what all these different, we go over the growls, all the different cow sounds and bull sounds, and really go into them deep on when you're going to hear them, why you're going to say this sound instead of. But we cover all the elk sounds on there too. Of course, the app is right there in your hand, and you can't take the DVDs with you in the playbook. It's all sitting there in the app. But there's a broader range in that information that could be brought up to mind too during your hunt, in addition to the app whetting your appetite. But for those that are saying, I'd like to, see stuff like that too, I would recommend that over all the packages in there. That one right there is really, really a great package for everyone to consider.
And I'll make sure to link to the website and the store and all your socials on the show notes page for this episode. And I'll have that posted up on the website, so people should be able to find all of that really easily.
Yeah, or if they have a question, there's a contact me button there. And then that contact me button on the website, it comes straight to me. I'm the only one that sees it. I'm the only one that will acknowledge it. So ask me anything about this episode or anything. You may have already have some of the CDs or DVDs. But yeah, feel free to ask me any questions, and I respond to every one of them. That's
fantastic. So as we're winding down here, I always like to close with, as we talked earlier, this podcast is really dedicated to new hunters or people from the city who may not feel like they have access to the outdoors or just feel intimidated, because there's a lot to learn. What encouragement would you give to someone that came up to you and said, I really want to get into hunting or bow hunting or elk hunting or whatever it is, but I'm nervous, I'm a little scared, there's so much to learn. What advice would you give them?
Probably the best advice for me is what I did when I was young. And that was, if you have a passion for something, go after it, and especially for elk hunting. Life is short. I can remember 2 weeks ago, I was that 12-year-old. It's really true. I mean, it comes by and goes so fast, but just do it. I mean, just do it. And so that means if you're going to do it, that you have to be serious about it in all aspects of it. And it's a good lifelong goal because you have to be in respectable shape. So it just makes you a better person, a healthier person, and it seems like you're fit year round. Maybe you work out a little bit harder before the season, but you're always in that conditioning because you never know what might come up. But if you're a newer guy, dive into what all this represents and all the sounds, because to me, that's what started building on me is when I started hearing elk and I started hearing talk about it and the excitement that I just had to do it. So it wasn't so much that I need this much money and I need this much gear. No, let the desire inside. If you don't have the desire, you won't have the motivation and you won't do it. You just won't. But if you do want to do it, you just have to push forward and do it and start putting a goal in front of you. I need to do this to achieve it or this. And always make sure when you put a goal in front of you that it's an achievable goal. If you put something so far ahead of you and so far outreaching and you never achieve it, you'll become frustrated and you'll quit. So make sure when you say, I'm going to set a goal, once I do get to this step, or this step, I know I can do it. I can achieve that step. And once you do a second and a third and a fourth, you're on your way to elk hunting. Whether it's my first step, I want to learn how to cow call. I know I need to be in a little better shape. So maybe I'm going to start with my diet. I'm going to drink a few less Cokes. I mean, serious. These are trivial things, but these are the things that lead up. And when you start seeing, man, 2 months ago I was here and look where I'm at now, you can look back. And you can see it's like practicing in a tape recorder. Tape your very first sound you ever make, cow sounds, bull sounds, and then keep practicing and listen to them in 30 days and know where you're at today as where you were at then. And you're going to, oh my God, I had no idea I've gotten this much better. But this is where I was at. It's the same with, like I say, your diet and learning how the elk sounds are, learning the country. How do I navigate country? To me, that's one of the biggest hurdles people who don't live in the mountains come across. They fear the mountains because where they live in these other states and towns, it's nothing like this monstrous country. You come out here and it's like, where do I start? It's like that. It's that huge. And when you look at that monster picture vividly and you're there, it's like, where would I ever find an elk out here? How I hear elk live in 10% of the country. Well, what about 90%? I mean, my gosh, where do I start? Well, there's information out there. The app is one of them. We show you how to start that. We show how to be successful your first time out. Don't take too much off to chew. You see, as a newer hunter, don't worry about bivvy hunting. Don't gear up for that. That's thousands of dollars. To come out here, you just can grab a tent. It's archery hunting. Most of the time, it's really warm weather. So at least you can get out there and be in something like that. And then you just branch out. Your first year will teach you a lot of what you might want to add to that the following year. But have the desire, have the motivation, get in shape, learn how to call right now, because that's your money to locating elk. That's your money right there. That's how you're going to find them, especially in heavy timber. If you're going to hunt more open country, consider some cheap optics. You don't need to have expensive optics. You're just trying to magnify your vision out there to see what's out there. And in time, you can upgrade. Your first car is not going to be a Ford $60,000 diesel. It's just not going to happen usually unless you're from a rich parent. Your first one, my very first vehicle I ever owned, cost me $35. That's the truth. It cost me $35. It was a Ford Falcon station wagon. I ended up messing up the motor, and I had to have it rebuilt. It cost $230 to have that motor totally rebuilt. That's how old I am, guys. But you see where I was. That's not what I'm driving today. That's not what I drove 10 years ago. You see, but that's what I mean. Treat your elk hunt like that. Just go into it slow because, what if you ended up hunting for 1 or 2 years and decide you didn't like it? See, it's easy to back out of it. I don't have thousands of dollars invested. So, get your feet wet out there. Make sure you're going to go out there the first time. And when you hear a bull scream and elk are talking, you're done. I mean, it's so addictive. in my 60s, and I can't wait to hear my next bugle. That's how terrible elk hunting is. But it's a good terrible. And that's what I mean. If that drives you and that passion is there, because that's what stemmed from me when I was 12 years old, and I couldn't believe it, and I came from a non-hunting family. Nobody hunted. I made that desire grow. Nobody was there adding fuel to it. Nobody. They didn't even know what the heck hunting was. So if you guys are way beyond that and you already are around people that hunt and you see fun in it or a sport, it's going to be so much easier than how I started. And so, if anybody was ever in that position and they are like where I came from, feel free to contact me. Man, I'll help you any which way I can. But you people who already have somebody that deer hunts or pheasant hunts or does anything hunting, you already have a leg up. So it's just you're adding elk to the equation. And once you elk hunt, you're going to find that other hunts just don't have the same, allure to it. It's not there. There's a romance there. There's something about elk hunting and vocalization and screaming bulls. You'll never come home from an elk hunt and say, "Hun, I heard so many bugles. I'm bored. I don't ever want to hear another." You will never say that. It's not the case. It's so exciting. And you could hunt for 3 days and your feet could hurt. It's ridiculous. And all of a sudden you hear a bull bugle 300 yards ahead of you. And let me tell you, all the aches and pains go away. You don't even think about a sore muscle. All you can think of, my gosh, there's one right there. I mean, that's it. You're trying to think of a plan now. How can I form one? I got to get this guy in. I got to get close. I got to do. You're not even thinking about your feet anymore or your back because of packs on you. It's nothing like so. That's what I mean. Those are all the things that are associated with an elk hunt. When you start hearing them bugle, it'll be easier to be motivated. And a lot of people tell me I have a real motivational way of talking. So maybe after you listen to all this, you might get more excited and more, into wanting to do an elk hunt and realize the importance of the things that can lead up to it.
Definitely. Well, Paul, thank you so much for hopping on the show with me today. I think everybody is absolutely going to love this episode.
Well, good. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, Sam.
All right, y'all, that'll do it for episode 79 of Living Country in the City. A big thank you to Paul for taking so much time out of his busy schedule to sit down and talk with me about elk calling. Make sure y'all check out the show notes page at livingcountryinthecity.com/79. Get links to everything we talked about in today's episode. And make sure y'all head on over to the iTunes or Google Play stores to download the ElkNut app. It is absolutely worth it. I guarantee you will not regret it if you are looking to improve your elk calling. Also, y'all, make sure you head on over to my support page at livingcountryinthecity.com/support. Check out all of those different ways that you can become part of the Living Country in the City team. It's quick, it's easy, and a lot of these ways don't even cost you a dime. But the ones that do come with some great rewards, so make sure y'all check that out. But in the meantime, keep it country, y'all.
Thank y'all for listening to Living Country in the City. Get show notes and check out the blog, product reviews, events, and more at livingcountryinthecity.com.